Welcome to Rogue Bogues. This is episode 22, an exciting pod. We have a special guest that we will be announcing shortly. But first of all, welcome to the Big Fella Pro.
Bogues, how you doing, brother?
I'm good. Some shocking news to start with. We just want a quick shout out, rest in peace to Mark Eden. Our thoughts are with his family.
Jesus.
He passed away at 64 years old. He played from 1982 to 1993. He led the league in blocks one year with 5.6, which still stands as an all-time record. There hasn't been a whole lot of news coming out about it. Looks to be an accident. He was on a bicycle, but we haven't got a whole lot more details. So rest in peace to Mark Eden. I'd never really crossed paths with him when I was in Utah, but he's a Utah guy through and through. Lives in Park City. But some tragic news to start with, Pro.
Bogues, you very rarely, especially in the NBA, do you have people that universally said the guy's an unbelievable human being. And anybody you talk to, players, coaches, media, historians of the game, agents, they all say unbelievable fucking things about this guy. Excuse my language for the first time and only time I'll ever apologize for swearing, because that guy was an unbelievable human being. And when I saw that this morning, I was like, I had to do a double check, because the guy's a great dude, man. He reportedly was mentoring and helping out Rudy Gobert as well. They had a pretty good relationship. So anyway, rest in peace to Mark Eden, and condolences to the family. To a bit more positive news, Pro. This one's not on the run sheet, but I have officially submitted my paperwork to be an owner in the NBL with the Sydney Kings. It's happened today. Dude, can I get a fucking job? I mean, come on. I mean, seriously.
Jobs for the boys. But I officially lodged the paperwork. We haven't heard back from the league yet, Pro, so hopefully it all gets approved.
Well, tell me about the process, though, for a minute, if you don't mind. Like, so you just put your paperwork in? Is anything that you could share about it?
Like, it was in my employment agreement and my playing contract. There were shares that were ready upon retirement, and I basically have just formally written a letter to the league to say I will be taking up those shares. Simple as that. So
awesome.
We haven't heard back yet. We know there's some issues that were prevalent between the owner of the league and myself, but hopefully that's all water off a duck's back, and we can move on and make this league even better. But just some good news, and it'll hit the podcast waves once this is live, and it'll be in the media the next couple of days. So just something that I thought the listeners would be interested in. But without further ado, Pro, we have a very special guest here. He is the host of the House of Strauss pod. He works for The Athletic, or writes for The Athletic, or whatever you want to call it. Ethan Sherwood Strauss, welcome to the show.
Oh, man, it's just humbling to be invited on the #1 Kwame Brown podcast in the world. I'm very happy to be here, guys.
I sense the tone of sarcasm there. I like it. But quick run through.
You don't want to be on that shit list.
I'm just overcompensating, because I got to be honest. I'm looking at the run sheet and I'm going, oh shit, you guys are hitting on, I mean, not only the playoffs, but just so many controversial, fraught topics. I am scared that this is where it comes to an end for me, boys.
Rename it to canceled.
I know the athletic staff is so used to just tweeting out that $1 a month sale that you got to take advantage of. I know they're fucking busy doing that shit. Bogues and I actually fucking work once in a while, just so you guys know.
Okay. I see how it is. We'll see. We'll see.
Yeah, no shit. $0 a month.
Okay, so for our listeners, Ethan graduated from Cal. He's worked in the NBA for many years. Before leaving to write for the NBA permanently, he was with he joined Warriors World and even started showing up at Oracle Arena apparently back in the day. Get this, in his first season with ESPN, he picked the Warriors to win their first title in 40 years, and guess what happened, Pro? They won. So that's kind of gives him a bit of street cred. He also is a Golden State beat writer, reporter for The Athletic.
I'll jump in. I'm not a Golden State beat writer. A beat writer is Anthony Slater, who does, a way better job than I used to do back in the day on that beat.
You're pretty much a Warriors-only guy. You're pretty much a Warriors-only guy, let's be honest.
Oh, well, that and TV ratings that we'll get to. But okay, continue. I think this is from like the book jacket of my book, I believe.
It is. So update your damn book jacket.
Oh my God. Okay, continue. Tell me more about me.
This is what we do
Did your book outsell Ron Artest's rap album? I just want to know, what the numbers were.
Well, I don't know. I made my money back. Did he make his money back? I mean, that's the way we can really find out, I suppose. But I was happy. I was happy with how it sold, is the summation, especially given, I mean, geez, with every bookstore in America closed when my book came out, that was suboptimal. So I was very pleased with what the sales were. But continue. More about me. Me.
Not so important was everything I just spoke about. Something that was more important. You were the man that famously drove Kevin Durant out of town with the Golden State Warriors. That's probably your number one. I'd say your number two claim to fame. Your number one is saying the Warriors would have won it. And then the negative was you drove KD out of town. You and I had a love-hate relationship early on. We used to get into it a little bit, more from a sarcastic banter type is why I kind of enjoyed you. And I guess I'd call you my friend now. So that's the loves and kisses. But yeah, you're definitely not on Kevin Durant's Christmas list, Ethan.
Well, I'm hoping it goes the way of what we got and my rapport with Andre Iguodala, where there was that love-hate relationship, but afterwards a very good rapport. But I'm waiting by the phone. I haven't gotten any calls from Kevin Durant. It might not happen. We might not become friends post Warriors career. So that would be very disappointing.
Are you sure there was no tweets from KD Burner 25 on Twitter that apologized maybe?
Perhaps. We shall see about it. But to what you're saying, it is one of the nice things about being a beat writer and then seeing guys grow up a bit, and the dynamic really does change when a guy leaves. I mean, your friend Harrison Barnes is somebody who did not like my coverage, and I don't think liked me very much because of it, but at least when I see him now, it's very cordial, and it's funny how that shift happens and how so much of it is in the moment, and then after a certain point, you can reminisce because you were just both there for a crazy time in the world.
Yeah, and you have to be around on our good days and bad days, and there's days that you have to ask questions when you know you're going to get pushed back and things are going to be a little bit testy. So it's kind of a hard relationship for guys to build with media. But I mean, I would argue that, once I left as well, the same thing. Like we've probably been in touch more once I was out of the NBA than we were the whole time I was in the NBA, right?
Yeah. Well, yeah, and I think part of that too is that I feel weird on my end because inevitably it turns from a rapport or just communication to wanting something from somebody. And then you just feel like a piece of shit. You feel like you're using people. And I think maybe that's why I should be better at my job. If I was more comfortable with that, if I knew how to leverage relationships and foster them in order to milk them, I would be better at the whole gambit. But it got really weird. It got especially weird with how popular the Warriors were, where it was just completely ravenous and anything from anybody could be used. And I had moments where, because I was a beat reporter back then, I just remember I was having to ask Steph some sort of question about him liking something on IG, which was stirring up drama. And I saw him look at me and start to respond. And I just stopped him. I just said, I can't do this. I can't do this. I hate myself right now. I can look into your eyes and I can see that you hate me because of this. And it's completely deserved. But you've got to be the remora fish if you have a particular job at a particular moment in NBA media. And that's just how it is.
Yeah. I mean, it makes for some fun musings, especially in a locker room. How many times have you been threatened to be beaten up by a player, Strauss?
Once by you.
That would have been sarcastic. That would have been sarcastic.
I don't know, man. It was one of those that could have been taken either way. I believe what happened was that I tweeted that you had a hobo beard, and I didn't know anybody was reading it at the time. It was just my aesthetic judgment. And then I go into the locker room after the game, and you point at me and you go, "I'll kick your ass, man." And it took me a few seconds to go, wait, what? Oh yeah, the hobo beard. That's what he's mad about. Now, I don't think you were completely serious, but I think you definitely wanted to say it in a way where I wouldn't be quite sure. Like you got to let them hear some footsteps, make them feel you, like they say on defense. So I guess you count. So that's one. And then there's another one I'm thinking about that I will not reveal. And I got about three. I remember David Lee once said, almost like a kung fu movie, when I said they should trade him, he said, "You chose wrong, Strauss." And it felt very epic. Felt like we were in a standoff because it was the empty locker room and pregame too, so there weren't a lot of people around. It was like, oh, da, 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 da. It was just very, very good standoff. And I think I just said, prove me wrong and whatever. But even with David at the end, I think I had a decent rapport with him by when he left. You'd have to ask him. So I think it's probably 3 or 4 times, and I don't think that's unusual. I mean, most people I know who have been in this business and who have had to do it on a beat level have some sort of crazy story about a player confronting them in the locker room and yelling at them and having to have it out and having to go back to work the next day. And it's one of the reasons why I think there's a big chasm in NBA media between people who have done that kind of job versus, and I'm not knocking it because great analysis can come this way, but people who have been involved in NBA Twitter or have done it purely from the couch. It's just a different world, and it's a different thing, and it's a dividing line. If you're in the NBA, if you're having to just get on a plane and follow a team around and be almost like a carny, cut off from everybody else in civilization, it's a different lifestyle, and it's a different perspective on the league.
Yeah, that's one we've all lived, so we definitely get that. One final question before we get into the NBA playoffs. How many guys in the locker room would you walk in and give a bro hug to and dap up and shoot the shit with like you were best buddies?
Maybe about 5. I'd usually, and this is when I was being cynical, I'd usually target a few guys who weren't going to get that much playing time. I would go the opposite route of those trainers you talk about, who would target guys who would be getting a bunch of minutes and touches as their rocket ship to the top. I would definitely try to have a good rapport with a few guys who weren't that involved because they had plenty of time to talk. Nobody else was really bothering them, and they might be able to just explain some stuff to me. And I'm not talking about dish and dirt or anything like that, just strategy, that type of thing, because I thought that was always a nice, useful thing you could do as a beat writer, is to get into the actual game in a way that other people weren't really getting into. And I mean, and this is, I can understand the frustration a lot of NBA players have, because we do not know a lot of what you guys know. And especially when I started out, I didn't know shit about shit. I didn't know that there were hand signals that the coaches use that turn into plays, these very basic things. And you learn how little you know, and that kind of allows you to ask other people who do know. But I found it way easier to do that with a guy who is at the end of the bench than to try to be bothering the star for it. Just what does this mean? What does that mean? Type of stuff.
Yeah, it makes total sense. Pro, you asleep? Still got you?
I'm letting you two fucking dynamos go at it. You know what I'm saying?
Well, I was going to say, it was also, I didn't feel guilty about it if it was a fringe end of bench guy, because you got to assess how people are playing, and nobody's going to give you shit for saying that the 15th man, or if it's Justin Holiday or whatever, like you're not really holding his feet to the fire and telling him to step up. So to my mind, it was a way to almost get a little bit of insight without having to compromise on the other side of things, where you talk about a guy who's involved. I mean, Draymond's somebody I've had my ups and downs with, but it was all ups at the beginning, but he became such an important person for that team that if you talk about him and it's a way he doesn't like, he's going to see it, and then it can kind of go a little bit sour, even though I think I'm cordial with him these days, as again, it happens. But yeah, so that was another reason why I wanted to target the fringes.
Well, let's be honest though, like, with the players' animosity towards the media in some cases, not a lot of media people are sort of straight up. Well, two things. Yeah. First of all, a lot of media is not straight up, and they'll use anything that the players said and twist it, and, just so they get more clicks. People, so like there's not a lot of people to actually be trusted, and that's the first thing, and that is a true deal. But the second thing is the NBA players, though. They're a little bit like in La La Land as far as everything has to be going their way. They don't understand that you have to report actually what you see, and you have to evaluate what they do on a night-to-night basis. And sometimes it's not going to be all good, and they're not used to that. The fringe guys are, the rotation players are, but a lot of the stars aren't used to that. What do you think about sort of that?
I think that's true, but there's another element where maybe they see it clearer than even we see it. because they often see it in this very cynical, hey man, I help you, you help me. That's what this is. I mean, that was something that KD would complain about, where it's just, why is Ethan, trying to be this detriment? Like, we can all rise together. That was something that he would hit upon. And they might view it more realistically, because there are these instances of media people attaching themselves to players, never saying a bad word about the player, and then just riding them like a rocket ship, and getting on TV and becoming a bigger media presence. So
CIA clients. Yep. Go ahead, keep going.
Yeah, maybe a little bit of that. Maybe a little bit of that. That's a whole topic that we could discuss as well, potentially, if I never want to work in this town again. But so sometimes their cynicism is a little bit accurate, but I also agree that some of these guys don't have the most realistic sense of what the discussion is of them, or what the discussion should be of them. And in a weird way, it can get very personal on their side, but on my side, it doesn't get that personal, because they can be killing me and they can be talking all this shit about me, but ultimately the thing they're mad about is what I'm saying about them. They don't even know all of my faults and flaws beyond, I don't know how shitty and awkward I am conversationally or whatever. I don't know, but it's not very, so it's this weird, completely skewed dynamic in that way. And a lot of that is also, they could probably roast you a lot better if they took any interest in you. And with these guys, they got too much going on to really do that. There's not a whole lot of, hey, how you doing? How was your weekend?
There aren't many players, let's be honest, that you could actually be truthful 100% with and evaluate them 100% with no bias, because it's a hard thing. Even with the hundreds of players, thousands of players that I've worked with, like, there's only a select few that you could actually be honest with them. And then, when it's not going their way, or you're being not negative, but you're being something that's not 100% positive in their direction and trending up. And they could just say, you know what, you're right. I may not agree with it, but okay, I got you. And that's just the world they live in.
Or even just to have it out in a reasonable way. I've heard that about John Wall, where when he's criticized by media people, he'll have a very reasonable discussion with them. It won't be defensive. He won't be cursing at them. He'll go, well, here's what I think, but. And the media in DC appreciates that they can just have a reasonable conversation about it. That is not how it usually goes behind the scenes. Behind the scenes, you usually leave the interaction and your hair is on fire. That tends to be how it goes. And there's not much, I guess, downside from the player's perspective, because you can intimidate media people away from criticizing you. But I do wonder why players issue just kind of glad handing, because it works so well. I mean, Jamal Crawford, he won Sixth Man of the Year all those times, in part because of his great offensive play. But a big other aspect of it is that he was just so nice to media and would remember everybody's name and would come up to them. I mean, you would gain so much as an NBA player in a rotation if whenever the media walked in, you just address them by their name. Because a lot of the people in media, let's face it, they're nerds. You could call them jock sniffers at some level. And when a famous pro athlete even just says their name and acknowledges them like that, they're going to drop their guard down, and that guy is just going to become their favorite guy. You see it. Coaches are savvier about it, in my experience. I mean, Doc Rivers likes to say the name of the reporter before he answers their question. And I just would love in Clippers pregame, when he was coaching the Clippers, just watching the reporter's face, because I could just see it transform and the heart flutter when he says the name, and he says, it's a great question. It's a great question, Andrew. It's like, oh, Doc Rivers thinks that I asked a great question. And it was all part of a cynical media strategy, but there's a respect in that. If somebody is even bullshitting you in order to get on your good side, that is a conveyance of respect, that they would even think to do that. And people appreciate that kind of thing.
Well, a couple of things. A, Jamal Crawford, like him, not like his game, what have you, the guy's a complete pro. He just knows how to be a pro. Now, one would say maybe he's bullshitting people, maybe he's not. I've dealt with him a bunch of times. I like him. I think he's he understands the
Everybody
game.
likes him.
Yeah, it's not just one way with him. It's, he understands people's names. He's got this whole thing where he's a pro, regardless of what he puts up at night, talking to people, coachable, like just good with teammates. The guy's a pro, and that sort of carries a lot of weight. And I think the name thing with pro, like especially young players, like when I was in Dallas, our big thing with the young players, Don Cockstein, the director of sports psychology, and myself, we would make our young guys memorize everybody's name that was in our travel party. And that includes the 5 or 6 media people that travel with the team playing. And I think that goes a long way with a lot of players. You see, they don't take the time to know anyone's names. Again, it's all one way. They don't understand that shit could take you a big way. Like Bogues would talk about in previous pods about the awards, how the media has a huge part about bonuses that you get because of like what teams you get voted onto. And they don't understand that like actually knowing media people's names, not everybody, you're not going to know, the Tacoma Press, but you should know the beat writers that are covering your team and look them in the eye and just sort of have a cordial relationship. I think that could go a long way.
I agree. And it doesn't mean you're a great guy just because you're being great to media. It can even be negatively correlated. This is just professional advice because everybody likes good coverage. Everybody acts like they don't, but they do. They like good coverage. They like when in the local paper or the tweets or whatever, good things are being said about them. And you increase the odds of that happening when you treat media a certain way. Many people listening might say, hey, that's not fair. That's bullshit. That's not objective. But that's the world. That's how it works. That's how it goes. So it was always so strange to me that more guys didn't immediately grasp that when they clearly were so invested in what their media reputation was.
Yeah, and you could be completely bullish.
Being a human being, right? It's a human element. It's a human being. I mean, it goes in all walks of life. It's the same thing. You treat the media as media, quote unquote, then you're going to get different rapport with them. Then you treat them like a person, like treat them like Ethan or whoever it is. And the only name that Pro ever remembered on the NBA circuit was the team chef. So I don't know what the hell Pro's talking about.
No question. Yeah.
Saw that coming.
Hey, Eduardo was a beautiful human being. Just let me tell you, the guy.
All right, let's move on. Let's get into the playoffs real quick. I know, Ethan, you haven't followed all the series. Pro and I have for the best part. We pride ourselves on not being correct on any of our picks, and that's how we'll start this first one off. Miami versus Milwaukee. Milwaukee have swept this series. Ooh. We both picked Miami. So that shows you how analytical we are. But man, what a series. Jimmy and Bam shot pretty much horribly throughout the series. Bam salvaged it a little the last 2 games, but he shot at 46%. Jimmy Butler shot under 30% for the series, 26% from 3. He had, he filled stats up a little bit with rebounds. I think it was 14, 7, and 7 for the series, but obviously that was a huge, huge elephant in the room for this series. Jimmy just couldn't get it going. Rumors of him being banged up coming to that series. Not sure how far that goes, but Miami just looks so clunky. No flow offensively, even with those scorers, Dragic and Duncan Robinson and those guys. It just looked everything they had to work hard for. Whereas Milwaukee, it just flowed with ease, which you don't usually hear about a Giannis-led team in the playoffs. We've historically seen Giannis get bogged down with guys loading the paint and he'll struggle to shoot that jumper. But man, they looked really, really good in my opinion. They did much better than I thought. I thought it'd at least be a series. I thought Miami would win it. But what have you guys seen in that series?
The one big thing for me that bothered me is the play of Jimmy Butler. And forget, like, some guys are going to struggle in series, and that's natural. That's normal in some respects, but it seemed like he wasn't engaged at all in the game, especially in games 1 through 3. They had the chance to win the game in game 1. It was a lot closer, but game 2, game 3 were complete blowouts. And then today they sort of fought a little bit, but they lost it. I worry about what his sort of framework was, his mental state, because he's a warrior. Like, you're talking about the toughest guys in the league as far as like mentality. He's probably top 10 tops. At worst, he's top 10. And he just seemed like Bogues, like he wasn't looking to shoot. He wasn't looking to score. He shot the ball 16 times a game. I understand that, but like he just didn't just seemed like he just wanted to pass the ball and like wasn't really getting upset with referees. Maybe that's just his mindset and mentality of the game. Like Kobe was like that, where sometimes he was expressionless. He just like was so focused in the game and the task at hand. But that was the one thing I was worried about because it wasn't engaged. I don't know what the deal was with him.
Remember we spoke about before this series started, there was a report by Shams that came out and said, Jimmy's disgruntled. There's been an issue, I believe it was with the coaching staff. And Jimmy's agent went off his rocker on Twitter and added Shams and basically called him every name under the sun. So, who knows what's going on? I mean, it's just funny that this series ended up going the way it did and Jimmy played poorly, and here we are being those media guys probably overlooking things. But there was some smoke before that series.
Yeah, and I apologize for taking Miami, by the way. That fucked them from the first. But I'm sorry, Ethan. Go ahead.
No. I thought it was a bold call. I like that you guys made it. I thought the Bucks were going to win it. I'm already moving on. Sorry to interrupt the autopsy. I'm worried for the Bucks with DiVincenzo being out for the playoffs. Yeah, because they're not a deep team, and it really seemed like, and the series was evidence of it, that they might have been actually coalescing into a real title. I don't want to say title threat because they were a title threat before, but they were a little bit of a paper tiger. And it was revealing itself multiple times that they just didn't have enough nuance in their attack to really get to the finals, win a finals. And I was all gearing up. I know it hasn't become official yet, but I want to see that Nets Bucks series so bad. And now I'm just worrying about what they're going to do to replace his minutes because they were subtly leaning on him a whole lot. And I just hope that they can rise to the occasion and make a series of it should they face the Nets.
Yeah, I agree. I think they hit on the head, Ethan. We've discussed it before. They loaded up on their starting unit by bringing Drew Holiday in. Massive upgrade, in our opinion, to Bledsoe. But the bench has suffered, and they're a fine line, and they're always 1 or 2 injuries away from like, holy shit, what do we do? And this is one of those situations. God forbid they get another injury. They're starting 5, probably their top 6, 7 rotation are all going to be playing, in the 30s, if not 40s. So there is some concerns there with just longevity of can they do this? So. I mean, it's a space that we'll definitely be watching.
Yeah, guys like Pat Connaughton's going to have to step up a lot more than he usually does, and to sort of replace the minutes that the big Ragu's going to that was going to play. But it's tough. I mean, not that he's challenging Wilt Chamberlain or anything with his whopping 2.7 points a game he averaged, but the big Ragu's a tough kid. He plays hard, and and Connaughton's a tough kid. He's a scrappy kid. And I think that they're going to have to lean on him a little bit more, And this is like when players think about their true value, when you have to step up and be ready in the playoffs and your role has to go up a little bit, I think that's a great evaluation point to see how players really are. And I'm looking forward sort of to see the challenge of some of their role players and deeper rotation players having to step up. So
yeah, Portis has stepped up this playoffs. I mean, he was struggling through different periods of the season, but I felt like he had a decent series to get back on track, and he'll be huge from off the bench. Let's move on to Brooklyn and Boston. Boston fought back last night. It's 2-1 Brooklyn. I mean, I don't see Boston, maybe they get another game, but the Brooklyn luxury of having those 3 guys we've spoken about at length, they still get bogged down defensively. I think they still have some warts they need to figure out defensively, and I liked the game yesterday. We spoke about Marcus Smart being a huge, third wheel for them, fourth wheel for them to win a game in the playoffs, and he junked the game up. He was holding, he was grabbing, he was flopping, he was doing everything he could to try and piss off KD, and that helped on that end. And then Tatum obviously dropping 50 is a big plus. But I mean, I don't see Boston. Maybe they get one more game, but I don't see it going much further than that. But I mean, Brooklyn, I have some concerns mainly just around their defense.
Yeah, I mean, that's the obvious thing, right? I mean, the offense is going to be cooking most of the time, but, and Joe Harris could give him a little bit more of a spark too as a fourth option. But, I think they're going to bulldoze through the series. I think Boston sort of put up a great fight last game. Maybe they could play them tough again tomorrow, but I don't really see them doing much more than that. And I agree with your point about Marcus Smart. Like, you saw that in the Dallas series with like Morris and Rondo and guys like Beverly, like that yuck the game up, that piss you off, that, you know, cheap shot you a little bit and just sort of like get you going a little bit and get you sort of unfocused on the task at hand. And, you know, he's big for them. I just don't think they have enough weapons without Brown. I mean, Smart could sort of score a little bit more, and Fournier could score, and, you know, Kemba, you know, doesn't look great so far, but I just don't think they have enough. And, you know, Brooklyn's, look, they haven't played together. That's sort of the story that you hear from 5 million people. And that's true. And I think the more and more they play and get used to it, and they go round by round, and I think they're going to get better at this, but, you know, it'll be interesting to see what happens. What do you think, Ethan?
Yeah, one of the reasons why that prospective Bucks-Nets series is so exciting is it's that offensive strength versus defensive strength dynamic, and it was interesting. It seemed like, I don't want to start any more drama with KD, but in the beginning to get going, Tatum. Well, I'm just saying, in the beginning to get going, Tatum was just really going at him on a few plays, and it just seemed like I couldn't tell if, hey, this game isn't the most meaningful game, even though it's a playoff game, because we got this series, or maybe he has, you know, he's some vulnerability from the Achilles and the healing process. But on a few of those plays, it just seemed like he gave up, or just, you know, do what you want to do. There was one in transition where I think Tatum hit a three, and it was a situation where KD just kind of stopped during the play. And I don't know if that's something that's going to manifest itself later on in the playoffs, but that definitely, as a professional Kevin Durant antagonizer, I guess, accidentally, of course, it's something that caught my eye, and it made me wonder.
Yeah, well, I think that's Brooklyn during the regular season. They feel like they can at times not have to bring it defensively, because we can go down that other end. We got 3 Hall of Famers that can get us a bucket whenever we need be. So they've had that luxury to be able to coast through defensive possessions, and you know, they're not as meaningful as they need to be. Whereas you've hit it on the head. You get deeper in the playoffs and you're playing better and better opponents, you're going to have to knuckle down and get stops at some point in the playoffs. Like, you can't just rely on Kyrie bailing you out, James or KD. You're going to have to actually get stops. So I'm interested to see how that goes further in the playoffs. As we said, in this Boston series, it is what it is. They're going to win this series. I think that there wouldn't be anyone out there betting against that. But there is just some concerns where, can you just flick that switch in a conference finals? Like, all right, let's buy in defensively now, when you haven't really done it all season. Yeah,
I think it's a tough thing if you're not really used to doing it. I mean, those guys can go on experience, and they can go on just, you know, they've been pretty deep in the playoffs before, and they could sort of understand it. I just don't think they have much of a lockdown mentality, any of those guys. So that's probably going to be the biggest hurdle that they face. And they're going to face it at some point. They'll face it.
There's a great play from that game now I'm thinking about it, of like Kyrie got matched up on Tatum, I think, in the fourth quarter, and it was just total blow by, and then Harden had the rotation as the rim protector at the rim, and Harden just kind of, he almost deliberately just jumped like a 180 out of the way, like whatever you could do to provide the least amount of resistance in the situation. And it's a great question right now, because there are guys who, you see them play bad defense in the regular season, and it's really a focus thing. They're not just untalented on defense. They can do it theoretically. And I just don't know what to expect with a few of these Brooklyn guys, where I just don't know if, when it actually matters, and they're, you know, many hands makes the work light. That's the phrase I'm thinking about. Offensively, many hands makes the work light. So they can't
what fucking fortune cookie did he read that out of today? I just want to know.
It was an evolutionary biologist at Stanford, I think, who said it once in a lecture. And
Jesus Christ, what the fuck?
Or trying to remember the guy's name, but now it sounds very pretentious. Actually, I don't even know if he was that. It was Robert Sapolsky. He has some other fancy job that I don't know, but he's got great lectures, and they're all on YouTube, and you can, you know, watch them and feel smarter than you are, which is what I was trying to do with them. But yeah, many hands makes the work light. So in theory, they should be conserving their energy on offense, Harden and Kyrie, and have that fire for the defensive end. But I don't I don't know. We would say at the end of these seasons where the Rockets would flame out that Harden was just spent. Is this a situation where we're going to see him fired up and really engaged? I don't know, but it's one of the reasons why I want to watch.
I agree. And funnily enough, I just realized I ran over the Philly-Washington series and skipped that on the run sheet. And it is fitting because this is pretty much a series.
Replace that with Kwame Brown talk. That's
Will Washington get game 4? Will they get one game in this series?
Nah, I don't think so.
No.
I think
it's over. I mean, Russ will get a triple-double, but one thing I've noticed, what I like about Philly is they have a defensive juggernaut lineup. Now, everyone will talk about Ben Simmons and the shooting and Matisse Thybulle, but you put Ben out there, Matisse Thybulle, Danny Green, I think is a very, very good defender for a spot-up three-point shooter. Joel, that's a really tough lineup to score on. They're very, very long. They can recover to things that they probably shouldn't. Most teams probably can't just because of their length, and I think they could potentially make some noise in the playoffs deep. I really do. I think they could give Brooklyn a run for their money if they happen to meet. It all hinges on Joel Embiid for me offensively, and that's the thing I want to see if they end up playing Brooklyn is what do Brooklyn do with him? You've got DeAndre there as your insurance policy and whatnot, but Steve Nash doesn't like going big for most of the game. He likes having Jeff Green at that 5 spot a lot of the time. So I'm interested to see how that goes down the track. But as far as the series goes, I would agree. I think the Brooms are coming out for that one as well, right?
Yeah, that one is a foregone conclusion. I have a very caveman observation about the Sixers defense. Not only are they long, but they're big. They're just nasty, man. I saw them take apart the Warriors earlier in the season, and I mean it's a physically imposing defense, and maybe they're not getting enough credit because perhaps to your lament, Andrew, we just don't give defense the credit we give offense. We don't, even though it's half the game. And people make up their rationalizations for it. They make up their justifications for it. But I know Mark Jackson will say great offense beats great defense. I just don't think that's true. I think we just like it better. So we talk about offense more.
It's prettier. It's definitely prettier. That's what the fans want to watch. And that's why we've seen these rule changes the last 10, 15 years, which do my head in. People want to see the pretty play. They don't want to see the grinded out holding that was done in the 90s and 2000s to get stops. So that's an argument for another day. Atlanta, New York, I have this game going 7, in my opinion, if not 6. I did pick New York. It is 2-1 for Atlanta. It's one of the closer series I think we'll see in the first round. That and Denver, Portland, in my opinion. And possibly the Clippers, Dallas, but Atlanta, New York, a really grindy, clunky series. But all 3 games really have had runs by numerous teams where they just go completely dry offensively. And I don't think it's anything different the defense is doing. They just go through lulls, and then the same thing with New York, same thing with Atlanta. It just goes 3 or 4 minute spurts of a 9-2 run, and then it flips. And New York struggling has come down to Randall's just had an awful series so far. He's had a hell of a year, but just can't get it going offensively. So I believe I picked New York in this one. Atlanta was pro. Where do you guys see this at right now?
Julius Randle has to sort of this is great for his development because he's not really used to being in the playoffs a lot, in his career up to this point. And trying to carry a team is really good for him. Now he's not playing well, but if they have any chance, they can't survive on Derrick Rose scoring 25 a game. He needs to get easy baskets. He needs to be aggressive. Hey, he's getting 12 rebounds a night. That's great. It's awesome to see Trae Young, to see what he's, the kid, like him, hate him, whatever you want to say about the kid, he does compete and he does go hard as hell, and he's a tough he's a tough guy to guard. And, he gets in the paint, he shoots his floater, he makes shots in the mid range. He gets in transition, he can make plays for other guys. Bogdanovich has played well. I'm a big DeAndre Hunter fan, but, I think I'm with you. I think this will go about 6, at least 6, if not 7. It's been fun to watch.
Yeah, I think I'm more on the Atlanta side. And in fact, when I was listening to the podcast, I wanted Pro to defend his pick a little bit more so. But I mean, he's just an abused puppy right now with the way some of these picks have worked out, and he's not having the confidence.
I got no fucking confidence, and I tell that. I'm not here peddling fucking $1 a month subscriptions. I'm actually telling the fucking truth.
It's okay. My picks have gone similarly in The Athletic, and it's endlessly frustrating to me that I even have to make picks because I want to do the Seinfeld "I choose not to run" after the Warriors 2015 title prediction. I don't want to be revealed for the fraud that I am. But
and for $1 a month, you too can get fortune
a
cookie
negative
wisdom.
negative indicator to bet against. I like Atlanta, more playmakers. I do love this series, though. I don't know if it's going to go 7. And even if I'm more so on the Hawks side of things, it's just a series with some juice, man. It's one of the more enjoyable ones. And I like those Eastern Conference 1990s type of scores and slow down when it gets bogged down like that. That's when it feels meaningful. That's when it feels like a basket is almost like an NFL touchdown. So, maybe if you're making the case for the Knicks, you think that Randall is going to course correct and he just needs to get his sea legs in the playoffs. But this is very set of TNT right here. Trae Young is the best player in this series, and I don't even think it's by a little. And I know you hear sometimes that guys don't like to play with him. They don't love to play with him. And when the Hawks were doing worse last season, you heard little grumblings and rumblings about it. But whether you like to play with him or not, man, is he good, and man, do they need him. And this has just been a coming out party for him. It's very exciting.
And this is going to be big, too, for the Knicks, I think, in free agency to sort of make this push in the playoffs, even if they don't win. But if they can push it to Game 7, get more excitement about the Knicks. Because let's be honest, the last decade or so, they've struck out free agency time and time again. They got a coach now. They got some young players that are decent. Nothing great on their roster. But, look, they're a team that can compete with, most of the league. Again, they're not a great team, but they can compete. They got a great coach, and they're prepared. Now, if you can make a push, you could see, people could see on national TV that, hey, look, there is some excitement. They're pushing people to the limit. Maybe they can get a free agent or someone who wants to go there. Nothing great yet, but at least it's a good way to set the table.
Yeah, they don't have to rely so much on the 2010 Bulls going forward is the hope for them.
Absolutely.
What's the issue there, Ethan? Is it as simple as Dolan? Why will no one sign in New York? Like it's a untapped market for the last 10 years for superstars. No one wants to sign there.
It's a dormant Mount Vesuvius, man. It's you see those crazy crowds outside Madison Square Garden when they win one playoff game. If they ever become good, my God, I put it this way. Imagine if these rosters were reversed and Trae Young was on the Knicks, how crazy the city would be going. So it's a big opportunity if you can turn it around, but ownership, that's a real thing. And if you've got a guy who's not very good, the fish rots from the head. I think everybody knows that by now. People don't want to entrust their career to the Knicks. There's just a lot of bitterness and resentment that run through that organization. And so I think it's pretty simple. I'm trying to say something smarter than what you said about it, but it really just comes down to Dolan, and that's the reason.
Well, I think, too, they're not really competitive. I think either you're a great destination town, which obviously New York is, it's been, but if you're not competitive, what fucking free agent? Like, remember the year they had all that money for D Wade, LeBron, and they got Amari Stoudemire on one leg, and they gave him a max contract. Like, their mismanagement of the cap, some of the fucking jokes that they've hired in the past to run their team as well as coach their team. Now they sort of clean that up. I think Leon Rose is, doing a good job so far early in his career there. And they got Tibbs, and now they just need to put themselves in a position to get a great player. Unfortunately, it's not going to be in the draft because they're in the middle.
By the way, they've also got Darren Herman, which you guys make many reference to on this particular podcast. You got to get Herman on the pod, man. I feel like it'd be a joke.
He'll have all the recording equipment ready, so we won't need that.
There you go.
I knew it was you, Fredo. I knew it was you.
Yeah, it was my guy. He's I hated that dude when I first got to Golden State because he is one level. It's full. He's 6 Red Bulls. That's him. Yeah. His personality, right? So I thought it was like
I thought it was fake hustle when I first got there. I'm like, look at this idiot, like screaming and yelling while he's running on the treadmill and always, this little small man syndrome. But that's him. I ended up growing to like him, and he does really work hard to know the game. I think he got a bit of a bad rap with, look, you never want to record your bosses no matter the circumstances. But
it depends on the boss, Bogues. It depends on the boss.
It does. Yeah, it does. That was.
I'll tell you what, though, every player that worked with that fucking guy loved him. That I knew, that I talked to, and they may not have loved him as a guy all the time, but they always said this: the guy's prepared. Anytime you ask him a question about something, he had an answer for it. He'll look you in the eye and they'll do that, and he just knows what he's talking about. And I think good.
No. You go. I shouldn't have. I love the East Coast, Northeast Boston. Go ahead, but yeah, I want to complete your thought. I didn't mean to jump in.
No. You got to come up with "there's nothing to fear but fear itself" cliche, or what are you going to come up with?
Hey, man. Hey, many hands makes the work light is a damn good quote. Number one, and number two, I didn't have.
Hey, who the fuck said that? Low Pan on Big Trouble in Little China.
I was just gonna say that Herman, I think, is somebody who was very important to Klay Thompson's early development as a defensive player by all reputation. Maybe Andrew knows a little more about that. I don't know. So important, I think, in Warriors lore, and somebody who I saw at the G League Winter Showcase in 2019. One of the last things I did before coronavirus hit, because it was right around the new year, and he was in the G League, and so it's nice. It's nice. I mean, this is the type of podcast where we can talk about guys on the either it's backbench or maybe not the coach himself. Yeah, a little Darren Herman segment. I like it.
Well, I'll give you this. Without throwing anyone under the bus, if Darren Herman wasn't on that Warriors team, our scouting reports would have been done in Microsoft Paint. So let's just leave that at that. So he did a fantastic job for us, and I think he was highly valued by everyone there, including the head coach. It just ended up going in the wrong direction. But anyway, let's move on to the Western Conference. Now, this joke didn't even get a laugh from Pro, but I have the Portland versus Enver series. I've left the D out for obvious reasons because there is absolutely no defense. Pro gave me no giggles, no LOL, none of that shit in the group chat for it. So I don't appreciate that very much. But there was some defense today. There was some defense today, Pro. Portland kept Denver under 100. I think it's the first time they've kept anyone under 100 since the Jailbreakers were playing in Portland. But no defense in this series. Jokic has been phenomenal. Had a bit of a stinker today. It's 2-2. I think this one has a real good potential to go 7.
Yeah, first of all, that joke was as good as fucking Larry Drew coaching the fucking Cleveland Cavaliers, but that was just my own opinion. I agree. This series, somebody's going to have to make stops for this series to go. Michael Malone. I'm sorry. Michael Malone.
Yeah. Watch out on that.
My fault. He was very hard on his team today as far as the post games go, and Michael, if you know him, that's the type of coach he is. He's he tells you the truth, and you could tell there's a lot of lack of effort in today's performance that he wasn't happy with. And let's be honest, you got McCollum coming at you, you got Dame Lillard coming at you. You got to step up. Norman Powell, those guys come at you. You got to make that second effort defensively a little bit. And, they have guys like, Aaron Gordon didn't really give him much. Michael Porter didn't give him much. I mean, this is the time when you want to make a name for yourself. And look, Jokic can't carry it for 38 every fucking night. And these guys who sort of complain out of the other side of their mouth about they need more of a role, those guys got to step up in games like this. If you want to be taken serious as a free agent, as somebody in this league that could be a potential all-star down the road, you got to have to step up in games like this. And they weren't ready to do it today. And, it showed. And I'll tell you what, Portland, they may not defend anybody, but fuck, can they, those guys could light you up a little bit.
And Dame Lillard had 10 points in this game. He was 1 for 10. He had 10, 8, and 10 assists, and they won by 20. That's a bit of an alarming stat in my opinion, because usually they go as far as Dame takes them, but then you have Norman Powell with 29, McCollum with 21, really balanced, Carmelo off the bench with 12. A pretty alarming stat when I saw that. I thought Dame probably dropped 50, but it goes to show that your superstar doesn't always have to take the scoring load, Ethan.
Yeah, I mean, that's an amazing stat. And Malone wasn't just mad in postgame. He was mad, I think, from the first quarter, whenever that interview was at the beginning. He was already killing his team's effort. So I guess it was apparent from there. I mean, he was so mad, it's like somebody called him Mike, which apparently gets under his skin. It was an issue there in one of those interviews, if I'm trying to recall correctly. Yeah, I mean, this series, I'm not sure would be close. I mean, here's a question. If Murray was there, would this series be close? Would this series be close in your opinion?
I think it would still, just because I think Murray's just so hot and cold, in my opinion. I think he can, have 50 one night and then have 8 and go, 2 for 16. So I think it still would have went 6 at least. I probably would have been more in the Denver camp though, but I think it's a pretty even match series, and just I think that acquisition of Norman Powell, we spoke about it at length, the pod, that'd be a great pickup for Boston back before he got traded. He's a phenomenal scorer, really grown as an NBA player, and I think that's been the acquisition of the pre-playoffs, in my opinion.
I would agree with all that. Also, are you guys watching? Are you guys cheating a little bit and watching Jazz Grizzlies as we record this podcast?
Yes, and they're next, so I'm actually pushing them to last now on our rundown. So hopefully this game will finish the minute 30 left on it. So we'll get to that shortly.
Yeah. Okay. I'm just watching Donovan Mitchell explode through a trap right there. Pretty good. But go back to the show.
ADD.
It's my play-by-play, my genius play-by-play.
Usually it's Pro, like about to go out the door because he just saw a McDonald's commercial, but now it's you watching NBA games.
You fucking cocky, non-lisping fuck you.
Can I say that one of the reasons I love this podcast, one of the many reasons, is that just the combination of accents is what I'm here for. That I've got the Boston Townie accent. And I've got the Australian accent. There are R's getting dropped left and right on this podcast, and I truly enjoy it.
Unfucking believable.
So you guys, who do you guys have in this series? I've picked Portland. I'm staying with Portland. It's 2-2.
Denver.
Yeah, I'll stick with Denver. Yeah, I think that was my original pick. I'm sorry, Denver, but had to do it. Apologize.
We'll see how that one goes. I think it's been a good series, so I'll continue to watch that one closely. Clippers and Dallas. Now this one, I thought the Clippers were done. Pro and I think all of us in that group chat were texting in the first quarter. Clippers made no adjustments from game 1 or 2. Luka was dribbling down the court, doing whatever he wanted. Porzingis was getting open layups and dunks. They were getting everything and anything they wanted early in that game. I thought they were done, but credit to the Clippers, they fought back. I mean, look, at the end of the day, they have elite talent on that team that can get you back in the game. And what was interesting to me was the script completely flipped. Dallas was smooth sailing in that first quarter. Everything was free-flowing, rolling, easy, kind of momentum was all there. Then that completely flipped. And then by the fourth quarter, everything was clunky for Dallas. If Luka wasn't creating, they couldn't get anything done. And the Clippers were getting whatever they wanted. At one point, they hit, how many corner threes are you going to give to Morris late in a game? He hit 3 in a row from the same spot with their rotations, no adjustments. So this series has been interesting. There hasn't been a whole lot of adjustments on either side. And can the Clippers get game 4 and make this a series?
Look, the Clippers spend more money on their fucking assistant coaches than the United States spends on fucking defense.
And GMs.
One guy say, hey, it might be a good idea to put fucking double team fucking Luka Doncic to get the ball out of his hands and force one of those 4 other guys to make a play. It's just, poor fucking Kuzma. He reminds me of fresh fish from fucking Shawshank Redemption. Zubac, my fault. Zubac looks like fucking fresh fish from fucking Shawshank Redemption every time they got to switch on a Luka. And it's unbelievable to me. Look, I wouldn't know an X for an O if they hit me over the fucking head. But get the ball out of his hands. Look, Dallas has been great. They've been game planned. The first 2 games, they were great. They were great opening up the game. They fought with it. They just sort of know, they got Luka. They got 4 other guys that play around it. Tim Hardaway Jr. has been good. But, I think what they did, they made it a little bit tougher on Luka. They were cheap shotting a little bit. That's why you have a Morris, a Beverly, a Rondo to sort of yuck the game up a little bit and fuck with people. And it worked, and they sort of got out of their element a little bit. But, god damn, the Clippers finally figured out, put Porzingis in pick and roll and just go at him. I think they were both having a contest, him and Zubac, who's going to give up more points on the defensive end. And they just sort of went at it. And Hey, look, I'm not taking anything away from Dallas. They've had a great series. They're still in very much command. Now with Luka, though, being, they're saying he's questionable for, I would say he'd play if I'd had a guess. But, like, it's just unbelievable to me that they haven't made one adjustment on Luka in the first 3 games. Like, that switch and shit don't work. Why don't you get through screens? Those screens aren't great. And, like, why not fight through the screen? You got 2 of the best defensive wings in the league. Why not fucking just go through the screen and not switch that? I mean, the first 29 times, you might want to say, hey, my 3-year-old son was like, hey, daddy, you think they want to switch? I'm like, yeah, you know what, Frankie, you might be right. But
the other thing
it was crazy.
The other thing is, Pro, like it's if you want to go 1 through 5 switching, Zubats isn't your starting 5-man. It's clear he's not he's kind of more useful to be in that drops, maybe a quick blitz, pack the paint, rebound, protect the rim. If you want to go to that 1 through 5 a la Warriors, you have to have Draymond Green at the 5. You can't have myself or Zaza or JaVale at the 5. It's the same with the Clippers. So I think not only is it not Zubats' strength, you're then putting Zubats on Luka one-on-one saying, hey, big fella, get us a stop, when Kawhi Leonard can't even get a stop against this kid. I mean, and now Zubats looks worse than he actually is in pick and rolls because he's basically put on an island. So, I mean, my whole thing is if you want to go 1 through 5 switching to start the game, you got to start Morris at the 5. And not to pat myself on the back, but that's why I thought Serge Ibaka was a huge kind of presence for this series because he can shoot the 3 ball, he can switch 1 through 5, he's an elite shot blocker. But he's banged up and not even really in the rotation, not even playing. His back's messed up. So it's just a strange one to me.
I think Luka's the scariest guy in any series in the league right now. With LeBron being hurt, I mean, this kid is the scariest kid in any series because he could just create what he creates. Now, look, Dorian Finney-Smith had a tough game last game. I think Maxi Kleber had a tough time defensively, trying to guard, Kawhi and, on certain situations. But Tim Hardaway Jr., they sort of got them out of their rhythm a little bit. And then when they subbed out Luka, early in the first quarter, I think that's when sort of things went downhill a little bit. And then so they got it back. And then Clippers finally, Kawhi Leonard and fucking Paul George had unbelievable games. And I just thought that they played well and they kept on, they kept the pressure on a little bit. But I'm just surprised that they're not doubling, now he'll get the ball back. They'll pitch it back to him. But now you're talking about 8, 9 on the clock and maybe force him into doing some other things rather than having the ball, getting that switch and just fucking, poor Zubac, man. Just fucking, poor prick.
I just want to know what their thinking is behind what they're doing. And I'm a little distracted as I try to think it through because it just occurred to me that Bogut was so defensive on behalf of his Croat brother and the situation that they're putting him in with the strategy right there, which is very amusing to me. But additionally, I mean, I think about, you made a great point that these guys should be well suited to get around screens, especially somebody like Paul George, where that's one of the things he's best at in the league, in my opinion. And it's just so strange. And I'm just rifling through it in my head. Is this some sort of Ali saying Foreman's going to punch me out? Maybe this is going to get Luka tired if he keeps having to shoulder this much of the scoring. And that's why we're not throwing the doubles at him. I don't know. It's very mystifying. And it seems like it's a very dangerous series to gamble on because perhaps the Clippers are just a few decisions or a little motivation away from completely turning it because they should be in control of this series, in my opinion, just on a talent level.
Yeah, and you don't know what's going on behind closed doors there as far as what they're talking about as far as how they want to guard this thing. But sometimes I feel as though with coaches, it's like a guy who fouls when they're down. When they're up 3. Guys who foul or don't foul, and they stick to that philosophy. It doesn't matter if you lose 9 games in a row with it, and they'll just say, you know what, fuck it. That's what I know. That's what we're going to do. And look, they didn't do it all the time. They didn't switch all the time with it. They switched probably a lot less last game than they did in the first 2. But it's just evident, first of all, screen setting in the NBA for the most part is a joke. Guys slip out of it. You can get through it for the most part. Maxi Kleber is a great screen setter. But that's about it. There's not a lot of great screen setters, on that team. And I just think you should just be able to get through it and not switch and not give them that upper hand. But fuck, look, Dallas has played very well. Last game was a little bit rough, but it'll be interesting what they do, going forward. I'm sorry.
I guess another question, a very pertinent question, because famously, when we talk about Ty Lue and adjustments, famously in the 2016 NBA Finals, Lue had his players stash just hundreds and hundreds, I think it ended up thousands of dollars, in the ceiling of the visitors' locker room at Oracle Arena. Because the idea was, in order to get this money back, we have to win, and we have to come back for Game 7. And I can't remember how much money it was, but I think it was thousands stuffed in that gross, grody. Andrew knows what that visitors' locker room is like. That disgusting, overlarge Oracle visitors' locker room. Do you think that he's doing it for this series? Is my question, or is it fuck it? These guys don't care anyway. I get paid too much. I've won my championship. We're not putting any money up in the ceiling of American Airlines.
Well, it depends. If he gets LeBron to call the league and get Luka suspended for a game, he might have a chance. But it still hurts. That series still hurts for Ethan, as you can hear. But I've mentioned numerous times, they stole momentum from us. The league had its say as well. But you got to give them credit. They beat us fair and square as far as what they did on the floor. But to me, the Draymond suspension and the rhythm that we were in really hurt us, and then it threw us about. We couldn't recover. But Ty Lue looks like he's looking down that bench trying to sub LeBron James in the game at times. I think it just doesn't. There's been a few memes popping up. He looks like a deer in the headlights at times when Dallas are making their run. Like, what do I do? Oh, let's just keep switching. It's just like, all right, man. I'm not sure, man. I have the Clippers getting Game 4. I think they've got some momentum back, and I think this game has a potential to go 6 or 7.
Yeah, especially with Luka, you don't know, even if he does play, how effective he's going to be. Now, look, he'll battle through. I almost guarantee that the kid will play. Just knowing the kid a little bit and knowing his shtick, like he's a tough competitive, SOB. But I don't know, like it'll be interesting. It'll be a fun series either way. Like the guys are competing, and it'll be interesting how they defend the pick and roll. That's a big thing, and if Porzingis has got to get going a little bit too. Like, it seems like he's out of sorts, Bogues. What do you think? Like on the offensive end, it seemed like he's out of rhythm. And I know he's missed a bunch of games and things, but like he's effective on his rolls. I think he posts up okay, and he makes a couple open shots. But it just seems like in long stretches that he hasn't been as effective as he should.
Yeah, and he's not getting those post-ups that he once did in New York. I think that was a frustrating point for him since arriving in Dallas. He's not getting those 18-foot post-ups where he can turn face and go to work, because we all know Dallas, they love the three ball. They don't want long twos under any costs. But, yeah, I mean, since the surgery, I just don't think he's moving as well. I think defensively, it's just me, but he was much better defensively in New York. There were numerous highlight blocks where he'd chase guys down. He'd get burned in a pick and roll, but he'd recover at the rim. Whereas now, like Paul George is putting a shoulder into him, and he's in the front row of the seats and they're laying it up on him. So my question is, if he's not bucketing for you, you're almost at times better. Dwight Powell hasn't played, but I think Dwight Powell plays well with Luka because he's a hard roller. You can't just continuously pick and pop with KP and Luka. And I think the times that Porzingis has rolled hard, he's got dunks. So it has been interesting to watch. It doesn't look like he's entirely happy in Dallas, even though they're in the playoffs. I think there was that battle when they first came together between Porzingis and Luka about who was the guy when Luka was a rookie and whatnot. I believe he played his rookie year, right? And yeah, I mean, I think it's just one of those things that's manifested that I wouldn't be surprised if Porzingis is out of there soon.
Well, $90 million in 3 years is tough, to take on, for teams these days, because not a lot of teams have it. It'll probably have to be multiple teams, but it'll be interesting to see. Like, look, they could still, they're still in the lead the series. Things are still looking in their direction, but I think if they win, it'll get better. But it'll be interesting. The rest of the series will be an interesting one, I think.
Yeah, I just got intrigued right there. What about the Warriors? I mean, I don't know if that'd be a good decision for them. But, just thinking.
They couldn't do it. I mean, first of all, nobody's taking anything that they have unless you're dealing like
Wiggins and Oubre.
What's up? No, not anymore. That contract's off. So, I don't know about the sign and trade stuff, but Like that's $30 million. So you got to have to get to about $24 million. Now that's Wiggins territory. But
yeah,
again,
Wiggins
like,
is 30.
Yeah. But I mean, yeah, I don't know if I'm taking Wiggins on to, if I'm Dallas, why would you take Wiggins when you already have Tim Hardaway Jr.? Like the contract's not that short with Wiggins. I think he's got a couple years left. So it's not like you got a 1-year deal, with them. And if you're the Warriors, you're like, you already have Wiseman, and I'm sure we'll talk about that later in the pod. But like, I don't know. Well, it'll be interesting to see who would trade. If there are trades out there, what
I think it's a hard deal to move. You're right, Pro. But I just feel like I just don't think Porzingis is happy there. That's the feel I get just as an outsider. I don't know anything behind the scenes. It's just the feel that I get. I think he played much better basketball in New York. I guarantee you he's got a best friend or an agent or someone sniffing his jock that's saying you're getting screwed in his ear. So that's the only reason I'd pen that. But let's move on, otherwise I'm going to be here all day. Utah-Memphis just wrapped up Game 4, 121 and 111 for Utah. They're now up 2-1. Memphis came back in this game, Ethan, as we were talking about. They Utah were up 14 at half, and Memphis came rolling back and took the lead with a couple of minutes left, and then Utah stabilized. But look, I love Memphis's fight for an 8 seed. Dylan Brooks has really been impressive. He's made a name for himself in this series. He was always a talented player throughout the regular season, but really his toughness and scoring, he fouled out late in that game too, which didn't help. This series has really solidified Donovan Mitchell is the guy that they need to be firing ISO-wise. Now, Jordan Clarkson's had a great year off the bench, but when it all comes down to it, all their ball movement, all their three-point shooting, when it dries up, if Mitchell's not firing ISO ball in playoffs, I think they're vulnerable. What do you guys think?
Yeah, I think that, again, in the playoffs, that number one option, you need that one option that can get just put his head down and get baskets in the right way. They got Clarkson, but I don't think Clarkson sort of is that type of guy. He can give you a great stretch runs off the bench, and he can give you that sort of that firepower. But like when you need somebody to get you baskets, and that's where Donovan Mitchell is a clear number one option, and he can get you that. Like, look, Bogdanovich, Clarkson, Bogdanovich, Ingles. Those guys could, even Conley at times can get you points, but like that, it's different when you're getting it in space and dribble kick and find guys. But like to be able to ISO somebody and score when you need baskets down the stretch, especially in the playoffs, Donovan Mitchell, if he's not healthy, then they got no chance, to win a championship or to even get to the finals. And with him, they're just a whole different mindset.
Yeah, and he looked pretty good, at least in the segments of the game I saw while talking on this podcast. It looked like he had that burst, and they're an interesting mix of unselfishness and guys who want to shoot it whenever they get the ball. And he just seems pretty essential to their balance. And there was a lot of reaction when Memphis took that first game of people saying, hey, the Warriors didn't make it, but man, the Grizzlies are really going to put on this fight that the Warriors couldn't provide. And call me a homer, but I remember looking at the situation and saying, can you really fairly assess this without Mitchell? I just don't think so. I don't think that first game win, is necessarily as predictive of whatever is going to happen the rest of the way. And that's just a big swing factor. The Jazz look like a totally different team with Mitchell back, and I do think they will control the rest of the series.
And the momentum that Memphis carried in from those playing games, I think that really helped them in Game 1. And I think they've kind of fizzled out a little bit since. But yeah, I think Utah, we'd all agree, will get through that series as they should. The final one, which I found real interesting, LA Lakers, Phoenix Suns. The Lakers, end of the day, they're still defending champs. They're starting to find their rhythm. Things are starting to come together. And now we have CP3 reportedly hurt his shoulder. I don't know if he heard it flopping or actually heard it in the impact. You can never tell with him. But one stat for this series, gentlemen, when Scott Foster has refereed Chris Paul in a playoff game, Chris Paul has lost 11 straight playoff games. Ooh, what's going on? That's crazy. It's a crazy stat. Like when you think about it, and Scott Foster's, we all know Scott Foster. Even Ethan knows the antics that we've had with when I was with the Warriors with Scott Foster and Andre Iguodala and all that kind of stuff that goes on. Scott Foster's a guy that holds grudges, and he's a human being. Whether that's right or wrong, is what it is, and the referees will deny it to dying day. But there's a human element to it, and everyone and their dog knows that CP3 and Scott Foster hate each other. There's a famous video of Chris Paul mimicking, Scott Foster threatening to give him a tee and all that kind of different stuff back in the day. But just a very, very interesting stat. And Chris Paul, murmured at the end of his press conference, 11 games in a row. Number one, will he get fined for that? And number two, how do you guys see all this?
I just think I wish this is one of the reasons why I think one of the reforms for the NBA should be refs should be available to the media. They should get asked some questions. That can keep the commentary churning, because if I'm Scott Foster, I might say something like, this dude's talking about how he lost a bunch of playoff games that I happen to be there for. Maybe the issue is that this guy loses a bunch of playoff games. That would be the first thing that comes to mind. Additionally, if you're Chris Paul and you're portraying this as, oh, this is so unfair, you referenced him mocking Scott Foster and imitating him. Obviously, Foster should call a fair game to the best of his ability, but it just seems like some self-awareness should kick in, and you should go, wait a second, this guy's really pissed off at me, and he has some control over whether I have a good work day or a bad work day. Maybe I should make nice. Maybe I should treat him like a human being, much like we were talking about with media. But it just seems like there's so much hatred mutually, and coming from Chris Paul's side, obviously being voiced, that he just doesn't want to lower himself to do that. So instead, he's taken the fight public, and he's putting that spotlight on Foster for this must-win game for the Suns. So I don't know if that's necessarily the best way to handle it from Chris Paul's perspective. I kind of feel like Scott Foster's the type of dude to go, well, enjoy number 12.
If he gets another game in that series. We are talking about your president of the Players Association, Chris Paul, remember?
Oh, yeah. Well, that's the other thing, is that he's killing them in the series. It's sad to watch it. It's not a criticism of him, because he's obviously hurt, but it's not just that they miss what he brings to the table as a very important player for the Suns. It's that he's making them worse when he's playing. And I don't know, I haven't actually checked his status for the next game, so I'm not sure, but it does seem like if they could do it all over again and Monty Williams could get the choices back, you'd just play campaign starters minutes, and they would have had a much better shot in these last two than giving Chris Paul the minutes they gave him. But they seem dead in the water with this Chris Paul situation, unless something changes dramatically. And the positive for the Lakers, LeBron had looked compromised for about 4 games and not really getting to the rim, and being stationary, which is one of the reasons why I think that they were sending him way too much help. The Suns were, I believe, in game 2, and just letting him pick them apart without moving. But in that last Laker win, it looked like LeBron was getting some of that burst back. He looked a little bit more spry. So I think that's another positive sign amid quite a few for the Laker faithful.
Yeah, I think it's 4-1 in my opinion. I don't think they get another game.
Yeah, I agree. They're just too much, and without Chris Paul sort of firing on all cylinders, they got very little chance, and no coach is going to take the ball out of Chris Paul's hands at this point, and they just don't have enough. Look, they've come a long way. They're definitely on the upswing. As one of my favorite authors from the Athletic says, there's a small step for man and a giant step for mankind, and I think Ethan Strauss said that, Bogues, and we're just going to keep on rolling with it.
Let's move on. We've got a lot to get through on the controversial side of things. Ethan, I wanted to pick your brain a little bit about how has the media in the NBA, from your time when you got involved, from your lens, how has it changed over the last decade plus you've been involved with the league?
Just way more neurotic, way more scared, appropriately so, because if you cover something the wrong way, it could go viral. I think you were talking about how with Kwame Brown, it's not so fun when the rabbit has the gun, and he's criticizing these guys who've been criticizing him, and they don't like it very much. I think a lot of guys in media went through that in the social media age, because, like we were saying, a player might get mad at you and you might have it out with them in the locker room. That's how it went. And to kind of prove your mettle as a reporter, you would step up to the plate and you would deal with that confrontation. But in the social media era, Now they can go at you on social media. They can make you part of the story. I might know something about that. And that really changes the calculus, and people don't admit it. Nobody wants to seem scared of anything, right? Nobody wants to say, hey, you know me, my thing is I am terrified of being criticized on the internet. Nobody openly said something like that, but it definitely alters the coverage. And so in a way, I think the coverage has gotten more sycophantic because of that dynamic. And it's just the path of least resistance to do a lot of happy talk and not just give, more objective kind of analysis. Not everybody has the kind of disagreeable personality that can withstand everything that comes with that. So I think that's the main thing I've seen over time.
What would you say is a positive change then?
I think that the analysis is smarter. It might be less prone to criticism, but there's been an arms race among people on the internet of who can break this down smarter, who can break that down smarter. I mean, I'm just giving bullshit takes in your pod. I'm not breaking it down near on the level that some of these guys out there can. Nate Duncan comes to mind. He's got a real gift for in-the-moment granular analysis. So I think that you've seen people through independent media and gate crashers really step up their game and go a deeper level into the strategy. And then there's just a better facility with statistics. I remember what it was like back in the day around the Warriors before this all shifted. You guys would try to come up with some sort of stat. I think what are we on defense or offense? And the same thing would always happen is that you would say, Ethan, what is it? And I would never know, but you were just like stereotyping me as the guy who would know because I looked nerdy enough. But now if you look around, I wouldn't get called on. There would just be a section of the press scrum. It's like somebody from over there, and there would be an answer, unlike there was whenever I was called upon. So I think that there's a much smarter analysis that you can also benefit from as a fan right now.
Yeah, and I think it's the access the NBA provides is obviously world class. It's just, which I think they overdo it sometimes, which I've spoken about at length before. Sometimes you just got random people in the locker room that have a blog with 3 followers that are really just fans that want to take secret photos of Steph while he's tying his shoes. But do you enjoy it like you once did when you first started, or have you become a bit of a cynic like old Bogues?
Well, I was always a bitter cynic, but it's just a far different experience, especially the last year and a half. I mean, who even knows what it is anymore? I miss being a beat writer sometimes. I miss aspects of it. And it was a crazy ride to be on, just following your team and what that was all like. And I will remember a lot of those moments for the rest of my life. But it was too lonely, frankly. I mean, the thing that would bum me out, not that anybody cares about the downsides of my job, but I would remember that you guys would be eating the catering after a game and it would be midnight. Maybe we're in Houston and you go, okay, well, onto the bus. And you'd all hop on the bus and fly out to the next locale. And me, like a shitty private detective, I would just saunter back to the hotel room and then wake up at 5 a.m. and take a Southwest flight to the next Midwestern American city. And, it was just, it's lonely, frankly. And that's an aspect of it that's not so great if you're on the beat side of things. General NBA media, and I only say this again, I'm very lucky to have been able to do what I do. I know people are listening and thinking, well, I have this job and it sucks. I don't want to hear about it. I only say it just because sometimes what people hate about their jobs is a little bit unexpected and not what you would think. The aspect of NBA media work that is the worst is just timing. That when you show up to a practice, Raymond Ritter, Warriors PR will say the doors might open at noon, and those doors might open at 11:30, and they might open at 2. And you really don't know because nobody gives a shit about you. The valuable people are inside that practice that you are not allowed in until it's done and guys are taking their free throw their free throw routine or whatever. So just the idea that you're trying to tell your wife or whoever in your life of when can I do this, when can I do that, and you're just always on the NBA's clock, and you just don't even know. You don't even know. And then you combine that with, extend that out of, and this is what you've also had to deal with. Hey, can we get dinner with this couple in May? It's like, I don't know. Maybe, maybe not. Depends on what happens in these games. I really don't know. So those things, not so great. I do miss aspects of the beat just because you're on the ground level for really cool moments and just the energy of the crowd, and you see things that would just blow the minds of your friends. And so that was all very cool. But I like where I'm at now. I like where I'm at, where I can go to a big game if I want to go to a big game. And I can take a little more time to write something if I want to write something that takes time, and I don't have to just be on that constant grind. I think it's something that it's better for a childless guy in his 20s than somebody in their 30s who has a family.
And you just hit it on the head, man. I was going to follow up with this. Like, I was enamored. Like, I doubt many NBA players think about it, but there was a season I was in Milwaukee. So when I was in Milwaukee, we had Tom Enlund, Charles Gardner were kind of our beat writers, guys that would follow us around. And I remember that exact thing. Like, we'd have a back-to-back, and we'd play, all right, we're playing in Detroit tonight, and then we fly to Indiana the next night, that night to play them the next night, 2 games in 2 nights. And I remember seeing, like, at a shoot-around, Charles Gardner would already be there, and you could tell he was banged up, man. Like, he's obviously just taken a, first sunrise flight out of Detroit to get to Indiana, and then traveled, hasn't slept. And I was like, man, these dudes have it rough. Like, they have it really, really rough. So they're already, like, some of the dudes are already a little cranky and on edge. And then, you might see some players mess with them a little bit, and that bad article comes out. And, like, I would then understood it a little bit better, because it's talk about NBA players, road trips, like you said, chartered flights, chef prepared meals, luxury hotels. You guys are on commercial last minute trying to get here and there. A game goes to double overtime. You're losing sleep. So yeah, I mean, I think it's a really valid point that it's not all it's cracked up to be like people think. You're not just sitting in the locker room with the boys having a beer, talking shit and writing articles. It really is a job that takes a lot out of you.
There's this other aspect too, where I like writing more than most people. I enjoy writing. It's one of the few things anybody ever told me I was good at. But writing can be tough. And so I have friends who will say to me, like, dude, you have the most amazing job in the world. That's incredible. And I'll just go, hey, take your favorite hobby, whatever it is. And that feeling you had where you always, back in college or high school, had an essay you had to write? Apply that now to your favorite hobby for the next few years, and get back to me and tell me how much you love it. It's like,
but
there is. Yeah.
I mean, Bogues, and you're having your $72 omelet at the fucking Four Seasons. Poor fucking Strauss is on C38 fucking status on Southwest, sitting next to fucking Diane from Kansas City that just smoked 12 packs a day, and he has to sit next to that, and you're fucking with a $72 fucking omelet,
Sometimes St. Elmo Steakhouse, I would splurge. I would live the player life, but
Yeah, only if Groupon was fucking dealing.
The thing was, like, there'd be not one player that would give that a second thought. Do you know what I mean? Like, no one. You just be like, oh, they're here again today. Like, but no one would be like, hang on, like, I flew on a private jet the night before. How did this dude get here? Like, he wasn't flying private. Like, so I don't know. It was just a funny observation I always had. But finishing on the journalism stuff, I believe there's a massive competitiveness within your code, within your brethren, as to say where, everyone wants to break something first. Is there a clique within a clique where you can't ask certain questions, or certain things are frowned upon and you don't want to be that guy? And we'll get to it a little bit later on with the ratings chat, but I feel like at times you might be that guy that ruffles some feathers within your own industry.
Well, maybe, but it would happen, I guess, when I'm not around, hopefully. I guess people are pretty nice to me, and I'm too emotionally oblivious to see if they're really angry with me. There are rules, there are codes. I remember Lee Jenkins was in town to visit a Warriors practice years and years ago before he worked for the Clippers. And because he's somebody he's literally, he grew up a block from where I grew up. So I just felt very comfortable, and I asked, hey, what are you working on? And Marcus Thompson, now of The Athletic, pulls me aside and says, hey, don't do that. You're not supposed to do that. Because people are afraid of giving up their angle or getting a storyline stolen. And it doesn't mean that Lee Jenkins thought I was doing that or that I would do that, but you're putting somebody in a tough spot, I guess, if you ask right there. So there are certain rules, there is competitiveness, but ultimately I'm actually surprised often at how cordial it all is within media. I think people from enemy media outlets often have a better connection with one another than players on the same team. If I go into a locker room, if I go into the media room, it's often, look at this guy. Oh, wearing that again. It's kind of nice. And I don't think that's the case with a lot of other sorts of media. I think in political media, it's very vicious, and you see how people regard each other and attack each other. Think about it. You don't see NBA media people going at each other on public on Twitter that often. I mean, everybody has their opinions, and people talk shit behind the scenes. But I would say, and I'm not lying here, like I really mean it, I have more admiration for colleagues than I express. I think I don't express it, because I write articles, and it's not a time where I would go, Zach Lowe he's not only a great article writer and game observer, but he's an amazing interviewer. There's not really a space for me to say that. And B, I don't really get into the Twitter stuff, and I don't tweet, where I guess you would give those compliments. But I look at a lot of people and I think this person does something that I can't do. I'm very confident and happy about the things I can do, but I will look at somebody, and I mentioned Nate Duncan. Nate sees things that I cannot see. And so I have a lot of admiration for other people in the industry, number one. And number two, it is surprisingly, it's less vicious behind the scenes than you would think, even if sometimes people get into standoffs and pissing matches and everything else. But I don't think it's at the level of what you would see in an NBA locker room, I guess is what I'm saying.
Unless there's no citations. That's when you guys really get angry, right? That pisses you off. That's your walking time bomb, right? If someone doesn't cite you, right?
Yeah, that's something that people get mad about. Sometimes stuff gets stolen. Stuff's been stolen from me. Shit would get stolen from me and get put on broadcast. It would be really annoying because I was working for ESPN, and then I would be watching the game, and Jeff Van Gundy would be talking, just quoting my article word for word as though he came up with it on the spot, when obviously he had been prepped by some PA or whoever. And I was just thinking, really, I'm working for ESPN. They can't just say, hey, interesting article, go check it out. But that's life, That's
it only happens
the
to the
big
great
money
ones.
is the TV.
It only happens to our good old rogue Bogues. We broke the NBA coronavirus bullshit rules with guests to their room, and we didn't get a citation, Strauss. I mean, it was very disappointing. I was heartbroken at that point.
Well, I think what you have to tell yourself in those moments, or at least what I told myself, is that if I get really mad about this, it's almost an admission that I'll never come up with another good idea. And I just have to feel confident that I'm going to come up with another good idea. I can't get stuck on the whole, you took this from me. Nobody gives a shit. It's just nobody cares. So, yeah, that's something, but there are various things. I mean, I get on people's nerves. They get on my nerves. We have a conversation about it. But I think part of it with NBA media is that you're going to ultimately see these guys at Summer League. You're going to see them in the media room, and you're all these weird carnies, who live this strange lifestyle where you don't sleep. And so you gotta in most circumstances work it out. So it's not, the elbows aren't as sharp as you might think they are, I guess is what I'm saying.
Fair enough. Let's go on to fan abuse. So it's been a pretty interesting couple of weeks with NBA fan-player interaction, if you can call it that. There's 3 big cases I'm going to read through right here. First one, Russell Westbrook, popcorn. Everyone should have seen it if they're an NBA fan. A fan poured popcorn on Russ as he was leaving the arena to get some treatment, I believe, or potentially even end of game. there was some backlash about putting the fan all over socials, as per a LeBron James tweet, was basically asking for the fan to be doxxed. You can basically agree with that or not. It's a separate discussion. We had the Ja Morant family racism. His fans reportedly had been racially taunted. A comment that went somewhere along the lines, "I'll put a nickel in your back and watch you dance, boy," was said to, I believe, the father of Ja Morant, or the mother. Ja's mother, sorry, and then some profanities. Trae Young was spat on by Knicks fans. So those three have been, pretty big news. I'm hugely against getting touched by a fan at any cost. I don't care what it is, unless it's obviously a high five or a handshake. But having something thrown at you, I think, is drawing the line. I think all three of these cases, the teams have come out and banned those fans indefinitely. Now, does indefinitely mean forever? Who knows? But I'd hope it would for most of these. If the comments that were alleged with the Morant thing, that's obviously, in my opinion, frowned upon. But it just seems like a real testy time in all of pro sports. I don't know if it's a flow-on effect from, the last 4 years of Orange Man and Trump and all that going on and everything going on with BLM and all those kind of things, but it just seems like there's so much, it's just a toxic environment right now. How do you see that, Pro? And then give me a follow-up, Ethan.
Well, I just think that the fan thing, they're just so on top of you, in certain arenas too. And it just gets to be, they want to get involved. They sort of like want to be in the game. And they think by doing that, like getting into it with players or trying to make a move on players or, spitting or doing something like that they're doing, their team some service. And, it's a look at me. It's a look at me sort of society we live in, and they want to go viral and they want to be important and they want to be they want all this attention. I think it's dangerous at some point. I think the NBA and these arenas and these teams have to really set this code of standard for, as a fan, what you can and can't do, and they have to police it. I don't care if you're in the, on courtside or you're in the last row touching the arena, sailing and everything in between. There has to be some type of code of conduct, and you have to be there to sort of police the rule. And it is dangerous because, look, anything could happen, especially when things get testy. You know how some of these crazy fans are, and look, you got to deal with it as it comes. You got to try to police it the best you can. But I think the NBA does a pretty good job when they catch things like this, banning fans and, trying to deal with them in certain situations. I think sometimes now, you see all the players sort of calling the league out and things like that. We got to do this. We got to do that. I think the NBA does what they do. They do the best they can. They're not going to be perfect. You're never going to have a perfect situation with these fans, because you're going to have a certain percentage of this element of evil motherfuckers that are doing some stupid shit.
Alcohol.
Because they think, alcohol, all this stuff. You're never going to get a perfect situation. But what you can do is deal with it the best you can, police it. Like, I don't like the fucking courtside fans. Like, the ones that get up, the ones that get in referees' faces to make calls, the ones that go at players. Like, I think there needs to be a strict code of conduct. It starts with them, that they need to sit their asses down. I don't give a fuck how much you pay for that seat. Because now, and then also the player has to, they can't be going off on fucking fans and sort of riling them up either. So, it's a two-way street, but I think obviously it comes more from the fan than it does the player. But it's a very dangerous deal, but I think the league has done the best they can to try to police these things.
Yeah, you saw after the popcorn incident, guys around Westbrook, staffers did a great job making sure he didn't get into the stands, which would have been understandable from his perspective. If somebody throws food on top of you, that's a pretty good incitement to fight. And if he got into the stands, understandably pissed, God knows what happens at that point. So that was the weirdest one too, by the way. I mean, some of the other incidents, you hear that this happened and you don't have video of it, but to have video, I'm not trying to outcompete anybody, because when somebody's obviously wrong on the internet, there's this game of one-upsmanship where I think he should be banned for life. I think he should go to jail. I think it just becomes one of those things. But it was some weird degenerate behavior. Sometimes I can think, not understand in the sense of empathize, but I can understand like a drunken fan throwing a thing. But that guy, he snuck into that little area almost like an assassination and dumped the popcorn. Just really weirdo behavior. And I do wonder if being away from people for over a year, having society so atomized and just socially restricted, and then all of a sudden you bring it all back together and there's booze and it's an emotionally charged event, we might be seeing that not every effect of that is positive, that there might be some overflow, because we're also seeing fans in baseball beat the shit out of each other in the stands too. It's hard to know. It's hard to know because it's all sort of anecdotal, and we're not statistically analyzing that there were this many fan events and but it does seem like something's up. It does seem like the behavior of fans has been altered from what it usually is.
The other thing is, like, I never would want, and I'm not condoning what happened for all these people out there that are going to fire up. I don't want my wife or kids in a visiting team's arena wearing my jersey, knowing that it's clearly my wife or kids. And now, should you be allowed to do that in a free world? Of course. Should you be able to do that without receiving racist taunts, popcorn? 100% agree with you. My point is, I'm not even putting them in this situation because I just don't trust people, alcohol, mass groups together, that group do mentality when people are drinking and it becomes tribal. I'm not putting my wife in that situation. And that was the reason why I didn't have my wife in Cleveland when we won it. I didn't have her there when we lost, because it's just something that I don't want to be worrying about. I don't want to worry about that they're okay, that my kids are okay. And I know if I bring my mum or dad, they're going to want to wear my jersey and be proud. And I just don't want to put them in that situation. But the one thing you guys are missing about all of this, and I made a comment about it, this was Philadelphia. I'd be more shocked if there was no popcorn poured on someone's head. Honestly, like it's Philly, and Philly fans are going to get all fired up. But I've got a few teammates that have played there and said it is the hardest place to play as a home player. They come and boo you and basically throw shit at you. So I'd be more shocked if they had, their next game in Philly and no one got hit with anything. I'd be like, holy shit, that's amazing.
But also, the NBA players are upset about it, rightfully so. But what do they want? No fans?
Well, that's the thing. Like Bradley Beal is saying that we need more protection. We need more protection. Like what? That like a sniper takes out the guy after he throws it? I mean, what could realistically be done? You ban the guy for life, and I mean, I think LeBron's tweet was sort of interesting because he wants the guy basically doxxed and wants that guy's life to be ruined, which is what would happen if, he becomes known as the guy who did that. Now we can have a conversation about whether that's deserved. But the internet is not a proportionate, I don't even know what the hell to call it, but it has a proportionality problem. So I don't know. Maybe that's what players want. Maybe they want the lack of privacy for the fans who do it, because that's really the only thing I can come up with that's going to deter the behavior.
It's never going to be perfect. It isn't. It's just these fans are too into it. Some of them are borderline psychotic. Not a lot of them. Most of them are decent people. But like Bogues said, you go into an arena and you have to worry about whatever color you have on or jersey you have. Hopefully you don't wear a fucking jersey to a game and you're an adult. But actually, if you have a team T-shirt on and you're going to get your ass kicked and your brains beat in because of that. I've had that happen to me. I told Bogues on a former pod, Ainge took me to, we had an exhibition game when I was at the Celtics. Danny Ainge took me to the American League Championship with the Yankees and Red Sox. I can give two fucks about baseball these days, right? So I had an all Jordan sweatsuit on. I'm up in the fucking upper deck. Of course, Ainge is sitting there with ownership down and probably sipping champagne in the fourth row. But I almost got my ass kicked, and I can give a fuck less. The guy from New York says, "You're from Boston, aren't you?" And I couldn't name fucking 3 players on either team, and I almost got my ass kicked. It's just it just gets to be these people. Some people that go to those games are fucking intense, and they want to beat the fuck out of you. And it's just you're never gonna. It's never gonna be perfect. There's always gonna be an element like that, and you just got to do the best you can to police them, get them out of your building. whatever the punishment's going to be, it's going to be, and you move on to the next thing. Because I don't think they want that in their revenue split if you stop fucking these people from coming to games.
You
hit on
the head though, bro. Like you hit on the. I totally agree with you. You handle it case by case basis. One dickhead doesn't equate to 10,000 dickheads in an arena. You handle the guy that messed up with full force, ban him for life, get him out of there, see you later. But yes, we will move on, Ethan, because I want to get to why you were frowned upon by many in the NBA at times, and that's the NBA ratings chat with Ethan Sherwood Strauss. So I follow this very, very closely, not just because you've written about it, but just as a whole, that there was a noticeable decline over the last couple of years in NBA TV ratings. Now people will factor a million different things. I felt like you had a pretty insightful article. I can't remember how long ago it was, probably 12 months ago now, where you went pretty in depth about breaking down everything from coronavirus to BLM to social justice stuff to fans having less money, whatever it was. You broke it down, I think, pretty well. And you copped a lot of shit for that. I know because Twitter said so. So I saw some comments and posts, and some was from people within your own industry. And I just always found it interesting that there was nothing really controversial said by you. You backed everything up with numbers and facts that you got from the broadcasters themselves about declining numbers. Whereas when I see different journalists out there that are on the NBA beat, either nationally or within a team, there's a lot of spin with the way they write it. I mean, we laughed about it probably 10 episodes ago, Pro, where it was like NBA ratings at an all-time high, but they're down, or something. It was something worded along those lines, and you're like,
no, I think it was it was like NBA ratings impressed despite all-time low.
Yeah,
I think it was for the All-Star game.
What? Like, what's going on here? But you're one of the few guys that at least had the balls to write what I think is the truth. The ratings are going down, and it's not the end of the world, and it's not because of one particular thing. But talk to us a little bit about digging into that, and once you realize that things were dropping. And I mean, I want you to touch on kind of a little bit of did you get backlash within your own group of people essentially in your group chats, or was it kind of just kept quiet like the elephant in the room?
Well, that article, not to give too much away about our back end stats, I think is my most read article, subscribed to article. So there is this funny chasm between Twitter criticism and actually what people like to read and what they'll reach out to you in private and they'll say, good article. And I didn't know anybody else was thinking about this or talking about this. And that was that article for me. And I started to notice it because I always paid attention to it. I'm just a nerd about that stuff. I'm fascinated about why is something resonating? Why is something a hit versus why is something not a hit, or what's even a hit? And to me, it's a pretty big deal. And I also cared about the NBA, so I was invested in, okay, is the NBA really getting better? Is it getting bigger? It seemed like the Steph Curry era, for instance, and the 73 wins, that the NBA really had that zeitgeist and was just absorbing a lot of the gravity in the sports world at that moment. So I'm always tracking that stuff. I'm always into it. I'm always interested in it. And I started to notice that it was going the other direction. And I think one of the reasons why my article got a lot of readership and a lot of backlash is because what was being said was completely the opposite of what we were being told otherwise. And there was just this big disconnect. And a lot of people were surprised because they were constantly fed, and it's adjusted. So it's almost forgotten. Like the conversation around it is already adjusted a bit. But for years, it was NBA on the up and up and up, straight to the moon, sport of the future. You can go back and see various prestigious publications saying that it would overtake the NFL. I mean, you can go back and you can read that. Around 2017, 2016, when the Warriors were killing it, when the NFL had these concussion scandals. And to constantly be told this, but the reality, when you actually look at the measurable interest within the United States, it's dropping like a stone. Eventually, I just added it up. I mean, it was basic math. It didn't even require much in the way of division and multiplication. And it was, on ABC, their numbers are down 45% within 8 years. they've lost effectively half their audience. And that was before the pandemic. Now, with the pandemic season, they have lost half of their audience in 9 years, half the NBA viewership. And so what's amazing to me is, A, that this happened, B, that we were told the exact opposite was happening as this was happening. C, how so many people in my industry say, shut up about it. It doesn't matter. This is a boring subject. And finally, D, that they say, shut up about it because I don't know, it's untrue. I mean, the whole thing is crazy to me. It's basic, it's numbers, it's math, and anything you want to say about streaming or this or that isn't captured, I just don't think is true, because over that same time period, the NFL and the MLB were flat. So this was clearly an NBA specific issue. And for anybody who wants to say that it only affects how much money ends up in Joe Lacob's pocket or whatever, I mean, it changed the league. The reason you guys are talking about the play-in tournament is because the ratings collapsed. The NBA will never say that, but that's what happened. Interest in the regular season completely collapsed. And the NBA, I think to their credit on this front, they're trying to juice the numbers back up, and they're trying to return some interest and intrigue to the regular season. Because guess what? TV runs the NBA, runs it. That's how they're able to have a playoffs with no fans in attendance, because the TV money is huge and it swings by tens of billions depending on whether interest is increasing or decreasing. So I don't even know where I am in this particular ramble. I guess I just get frustrated after a while that the legitimacy of the topic needs to be defended before we even get to the topic itself, which is interesting. You don't have to be interested in it. You can be interested in other things. But if it is something you want to look into, there's a lot there. And at least for me, it's something I enjoy writing about.
I think it's warranted. I think that there definitely is some smoke to it, and I noticed exactly the same thing. I noticed you were called numerous names for penning these articles at times, and then I also noticed there was some journalists saying, "Why does it matter? Let's stop talking about it. Who cares? This is so last year. Nothing. Let's move on. The NBA is still doing well." It's just, to me, that solidified that I think it is a concern. I think it is a concern for the NBA.
It's a cope. Let's face it. Let's be real about it. You don't need to be the greatest psychoanalyst to see it. They wouldn't be saying it if the news was good. And they won't be saying it if the news is good, because the NBA has, some good stuff happening this postseason. We'll certainly have better numbers on the viewership front than they had in 2020 in that bubble mess. But that's what it is. I feel uncomfortable. Like I want my industry to do better. Or, the other aspect, frankly, is that it's become part of the culture war. And so people get dug in on that front, and they don't want to admit reality. And you had Donald Trump making fun of the NBA for its ratings. You think about NBA media and how NBA media is probably over 90% non-Trump supporters. And you've got the guy they hate most mocking the NBA for its lack of popularity. That's going to alter how they approach the issue. I think a lot of people at that point are not going to just cut and dried. Let's be objective. Let's look at it. And so I think that it's an issue that people have a lot of denial about right now. They really are not into the idea that the political messaging from the league might have some sort of popularity cost. A, because nobody they know would have any issue with it. And B, because they just don't want it to be true. But the NBA has a very peculiar problem, which is that it is the archetypal blue state sport, but it is disproportionately in red state regions because that's how they wanted to make money. The more, let's call them podunk cities, were more willing to say, screw it, we'll tax our citizens. We want to make the big time. Please bring an NBA team to Oklahoma City. Please bring an NBA team to Tennessee, even though Memphis is obviously, votes Democrat, but surrounding area. Same with New Orleans. So the NBA has a disproportionately Republican audience to draw from. 1 in 3 NBA fans, according to market research by the National Media Research Company, are Republican. It's 1 to 2 Republican to Democrat. So that's majority Democrat, but 1 out of 3 is Tony Gwynn's batting average, right? Like, that's a lot of people. So the idea that is often being promoted that what has happened socially has no impact on popularity, I would respect it more if the idea was, hey, fuck those people. If people are mad, they're mad. This is more important than that. That would be honest. I think what's dishonest is to say the messaging is brave and heroic, and by the way, everybody loves it. That makes no goddamn sense.
Yeah, and I think that's where it gets muddied. It gets muddied because politics is involved, and it becomes tribal, like anything else. Like we talked about the fans before, it becomes tribal, and it's like, oh no, not my team, not my team. My team's doing fine. It's got nothing to do. And unfortunately for all our listeners, there are Republican fans, there are Republican coaches, there are Republican players, if not closeted. They might make a minority of your league, but they still support the league in some capacity. And whenever you get political with anything, you have to respect both sides of the argument. And as soon as you shun one side, which I think some fans arguably felt, you're going to lose some fans. And that's taboo to talk about, though, which I think is the unfortunate thing.
Which is weird. It's weird that it's taboo to talk about. I just think it's reality. And I think for mentioning that, and I probably was a little more controversial than you're describing, to be fair to people at an issue. I haven't said anything that players should alter whatever they're saying for a variety of reasons. One of them is that I don't think it's tenable for the league to say to superstars, you can only talk about this or that. I just don't think that's a good idea. So I've never said, hey, players should avoid saying this or players should avoid saying that. Say what you want to say. But I think where it's gotten weird, actually, and I mentioned in the article, it's some of these coaches obviously afraid for their jobs, obviously afraid of not being able to connect with their players, and are overcompensating in public to a ridiculous degree that just doesn't feel authentic. And nobody around them is saying that. Certainly not a lot of people in NBA media are saying that. But people watch, people know, like people have common sense. They know when they're listening to it. They're going, oh, well, I know what this guy's job is and I know what he's doing. And they also don't necessarily look at it, Greg Popovich as the president of the world who is going to give them their marching orders and they're going to follow it. So that was the criticism I had was, you got guys like Greg Popovich, who basically drafted a team according to, as he explained to people, that he did not want American players. And I think everybody knew he wasn't talking about Matt Bonner when he talked about how American players don't work hard and are selfish, right? And he's got a lot to overcompensate for, considering all the stuff that was said in the past. And I just don't believe it. I'm sorry, but I don't. And I think a lot of people don't. And so I mentioned that, and that might have been legitimately a little bit taboo. And I think a lot of people got their backs up when, guys like the sainted Greg Popovich were mentioned in that way, because it does seem like something where somebody should at least talk to them and say, maybe you're at like an 11, maybe you should just dial it back, because a lot of people are kind of noticing that this isn't about them. This might be about you.
Fair enough. Definitely fair enough. And yeah, it's just an interesting time. Whenever politics get involved in anything, things get skewed, analytics get skewed, stats get skewed. And I think we see it in this case. I think there's not an end of the world issue for the NBA with ratings, but there is a steady decline that needs to be spoken about objectively. And we don't need to sit here and cry over spilt milk. But I will say, great input on this segment, Pro. It's been much appreciated.
Well, Pro can't get past, I've listened, like Pro can't get past the fact that this is happening, but the next TV deal is going to be even bigger.
That's the only thing I fucking talk about with ratings, folks. Like, I'm reading all this shit about their fucking ratings going down, yet the TV contracts keep going up. And I guess with the streaming and things like that, maybe it makes it obviously that much more valuable, but it's unbelievable that the TV contracts continue to go up if the ratings, are going down like that. But again, I'm not a businessman. I have no idea how to read that sort of element.
It's almost like there's a lot of unacknowledged inflation right now that is reflected in NBA team valuations and a lot of other products. So that's part of it. But yeah, the other part is streaming and having just differentiated content. So the NBA is not going to go broke. Certainly, they're going to get a better deal. But a lot of their decisions are going to be based upon How can we start doing better? And I do wonder if eventually there's a reckoning. I do wonder if eventually this just makes everything so unwieldy. But I think it's an interesting topic on a lot of different levels. I mean, the thing that really killed them as far as the ratings downturn, I can see, if you want to peg one moment to it, a lot of it came after the Daryl Morey China stuff with LeBron. And so I think that's an issue that's a big blind spot for people who make decisions for businesses, because these guys are frequent flyers, they're world travelers, they see nothing wrong with doing all this business with China. And then you look at the survey data of the American public and how the American public views China, and how, maybe 78% blame China for the pandemic that's killed 600,000 Americans. And it's really hard going forward for the NBA to do. They're almost, what I would say? They're almost so cynical, they're naive, is what I would say about this, where they just think nobody's going to care. Like, nobody's going to care. Nobody cared before. Nobody gives a shit. We can just do whatever we want. We can just have any sort of relationship with China. Nobody in America. And I think they might not see what's coming around the corner. I don't know, A, how much fans are going to like that, and B, just even if the relationship between our countries is tenable. So that's the additional thought on it, on the UN edition of the Rogue Bogues podcast.
That's it. Let's move on to something that Pro can comment about. We've got a few more segments left. We're at 2 hours, going strong. So Pro, we're going to talk about some weight issues with one of my Australian female counterparts, Liz Cambridge. She got called 300 pounds by an opposing head coach, basically saying, she's so big, look at her, she's 300 pounds. It has not been taken lightly by Cambridge, to say the least. Now, we've all heard it, when people were referring to Shaq, it's like, man, he's 400 pounds. Of course he ran him over. That's the context this was set in. I've heard the comments. I don't think anything was malice. And nonetheless, Cambridge went on social media and said something along the lines of this: something went down in today's game and I need to speak on it, because if there's one thing about me, it's that I never let a man disrespect me, ever, especially a little white one. So to the coach of Connecticut, I'm sorry, little sir man, I do not know your name, but the next time you try to call out a referee trying to get a call being like, come on, she's 300 pounds, I'm going to need you to get it right, baby. I'm 235 pounds, and I'm very proud of being a big bitch, big body, big Ben's baby. So don't ever try to disrespect me or another woman in the league. Pro, give us your weight take.
Currently at 242, just so you know. But first of all, I want to start a GoFundMe for that head coach, because he got fined $10,000 and he won't be getting paid for the next 18 to 24 months to make up for the $10,000 that he's going to make. But the second, I need some water. It's a double standard, right? Like, it is. Look, obviously it's a mean comment. I get it. But like, in the men's side, you hear that all the time. The guy weighs 300 pounds. How can he get out of the fucking lane? Like, you hear that. And the women's side, obviously you got to, it's sort of a little bit different. It's taken much differently. And I don't know, man. The comment, if the comment was made off the court, like in just regular society, yeah, you could probably say that was a mean comment, blah, blah, blah. But it's in competition. It's the games. I'm sure there's a lot more shit talking that gets taken into it. But the whole white comment, obviously, it ruins her whole deal to me. Like, I saw the video of her talking, and that whole, like, you're a little white man. Like, again, whenever you put color into it and race into it, to me, I call bullshit. I call bullshit, because, like, you don't want to be called out for that, but yet you'll call him out for being white. Why can't it just be a coach? It's the same thing. I try to judge everything on the same level, but look, it's a woman thing. Obviously, they're more sensitive than guys are with their weight in most cases, and it's going to be, it's going to be blown out of proportion. And I just feel as though that, like, yeah, it was a comment, a little off color, but that's just in competition. I think there are a lot worse things you could be called than that. And Yeah, I don't know. What do you guys think about it?
Yeah, I mean, when I first heard about it, I thought it was really a pointed comment. I thought it was, hey, Fatty in there is doing such and such. I didn't know it would be just an explanation of physics of, come on, she weighs this. It couldn't possibly be a foul. I mean, that's such a regular comment that you hear in basketball when you're trying to argue a call. So, I mean, pretty insane overreaction. I believe he apologized. He was probably pressured to do so. He should
Probably, yeah. Probably.
Yeah, probably.
Yeah.
I would assume. But it's a different culture in the WNBA. I don't claim to know everything about it, but yeah, this just seems like a real overreaction. And that's all I really got, because that's the only context I have. I actually literally don't know that coach's name, unlike her, who was pretending because she was so mad.
Kurt Miller. Oh, I had to look it up. Look, I'm going to be honest. I don't follow the WNBA, probably much like you two guys don't. But man, it's where are we going to go? What about if you say DeAndre Jordan's at the three? He can't shoot. Let him shoot it. Is that going to be an issue moving forward?
I would love to see what would happen. I would love to see what would happen if a player did, if a player in the NBA did stage a complaint like that based on their weight getting made fun of. I think the reaction would be brutal.
Well, one is a potential MVP
assumption
of the NBA right now. How much shit did he cop? Have you seen? We've all seen the meme with him as a kid with his titties, right?
Yeah. Oh yeah. Everybody talks about. I mean, dude,
Like,
Harden too gets it. Luca gets it. It's
Like
frankly
Sweetney, Eddie
good
Curry,
fun.
Shaq. Like, I mean, I just don't. I cannot believe they fined the coach and suspended him a game. I just can't believe. I'm on the pro side of things. Get them two in a room, hash it out. Like, say, hey, coach, look, just tone it down a little bit. It's a sensitive league. We can't be saying those kind of things. And get on with life.
If he had said 235 pounds, is it okay at that point? Was it just a numerical mistake? Is he getting fined and punished for just a numerical mistake when he called out the weight? Is that what's going on?
It was like $600 per pound over, I think it was. That was the ratio they used. The best part about these comments are, like, no one's going to disrespect me, and then finishing your paragraph off with, I'm a proud big bitch. I'm just sitting there like, okay.
What was the Big Benz? Is that by the way? Is that an Australian term? When
Big
she
Benz?
was saying
No idea. I think it might be something. It might be Mercedes Benz. I'm guessing hip hop culture. Maybe I have no idea. I plead the fifth on that one. But she finished her own sentence off by contradicting her initial gripes with the coach's comments. Kind of killed it for me, but I love piling on old Cam. We've had a good history.
She almost closed it. She almost closed it out by saying, "I'm 300 pounds." No, it's just like, I mean, the whole thing's crazy. It's totally crazy. But the reason why it happens is that everybody's afraid to engage with it. Nobody wants to get in that particular situation. Nobody wants to be the subject of the sort of social media posts that she put on out there. And I think in those conditions, you're going to have people act in a certain way because there aren't many consequences on their end, and there are a lot of consequences for the person they're attacking, and everybody else is just going to shut up about it. I mean, I don't talk about anything on Twitter, but even if I was somebody who did, I'd probably look at that and go, yeah, do I really want to burn calories defending this coach from this thing and get attacked by the people who are mad at him? I think that's the calculus people make, and that's why these sort of things happen. And everybody in secret, because I heard a lot of people in just quietly on this one talking amongst themselves saying like, oh, man, this is kind of a crazy overreaction, but yet it happens.
Mm-hmm. And it is, and that's why we need more rogues in the world, podcasting, more rogues in the media. Let's finish off with this final segment, running over time. The Golden State Warriors, we have the guru himself online, so I have to ask. Let's break him down a little bit. Where do they stand? Where are they at? Does Curry stay? Clay's health? Do they rebuild? Do they tank? Championship or bust? Or are they middle ground? What is going on, Strauss? You pick the championship. Pick next year for us.
Strauss-Adamus.
Strauss-Adamus, yeah. They seem like... Okay, so here's my formulation. They're not far away, but they need to make a really tough decision to get there. That's how I see it right now. Because, as we have discussed, it's almost like they're in this stalemate where Draymond, who raises their floor so much, offensively puts the ceiling on them. These teams are playing him with that that trap on Steph. They're playing him for that floater. And, in these 2 games for their season at the end, they really struggled to score. And so obviously Clay's return will help with the spacing, but they've got this issue. And the other issue they have is that he's fantastic as a small ball center at the 5, but they drafted James Wiseman, who obviously is a center, and with Steph had terrible chemistry. Their numbers were awful, and you can say, hey, he was a teenager, but they want to win a championship, and you're just gambling a lot on it going right. So they've just got these 2 big elephants in the room of the Draymond situation and the Wiseman situation, and it's not exactly clear to me what they should do. At the same time, I think that they're only a few veterans away from competing for a title, and they don't need another superstar necessarily. They just need to make these really difficult decisions pan out for them.
I think they're in a tough spot. I think they really are because, not to toot my own horn, but I think the 5 spot with the Warriors is a Bogut late in his career, a Zaza, a JaVale, David West.
The Bogut theory.
No, I really do, because I think you need a guy.
No, I said it. I was on local radio. I was on Tolbert's radio show, and I credited you with this theory, and I'm calling it the Bogut theory, that for so long I'll let you say it. You're actually Bogut, so you can say it. You say
can chime
the theory.
in, but I just think you need a role playing 5-man. I think that's the elephant in the room with Wiseman. You've drafted a top 5 pick, a lottery pick that on most teams would be invested in getting post touches, in getting involved in the offense, where he's essentially, hey, we're going to throw it to the post to you every now and then, but don't try to score. We're trying to run a decoy to get Steph a 3 by throwing it inside. And that's the role. I was okay accepting it late in my career. Zaza was, JaVale was. We're cool with that, and we're winning with it, so it's not a problem. And that machine's been oiled that way for, almost a decade now. Whereas now you have to develop a 5, make him a scoring threat. There's no post touches. It's just a clunky fit to me. I don't get it. And I just don't think it works with the Splash Brothers there. And this isn't saying that someone needs to move on. It's just, I think Wiseman's ceiling is not going to be hit with this team. He cops a lot of shit already in his first year. They're already, there's fans already wanting to throw him off a bridge and get rid of him. I think that's really unfair. I think you got to wait 2 or 3 years, but I don't think he's going to get what he arguably would with a Washington, or let's say a Memphis without Valanciunas, where he's going to play. And you're going to, like Pro always says, we're going to let you make your mistakes. We want you to go to a la Julius Randle, get to your first round and take your lumps. How else are you going to learn? I don't think he gets that with the Warriors. And I think that's the elephant in the room for me. So that's why I would move on from him, in my personal opinion, and try to get a third wheel star and try to get over the hump. Steph and Clay aren't going to play for a 7, 8, 9 seed, for the next 4 or 5 years. They want to get over that hump. So now you're in a predicament where you're like, okay, even fully healthy, are they winning a championship fully healthy right now? Probably not. There's still a few pieces away, in my opinion. Role players, Andre Iguodala types, and they don't have that on their roster at the moment.
Yeah, if Wiseman stays on the Warriors, he's got a good chance of making wildly entertaining YouTube videos 15 years from now that we will all enjoy, where he defends his career and his life decisions. I find the Bogut theory fascinating. The idea that the Warriors always wanted this all-star scoring big high upside guy because they didn't have it during this championship run, but maybe nobody was asking whether they never had it for a reason, that it didn't really fit them, that something else fit them, and that sometimes less can be more. And I think that there's some truth to that. Obviously, there's a superstar type of big who would be incredible with the Warriors. I mean, if you put Jokic as their center, right? I mean, that would probably be amazing.
But what does it do for Draymond then? That's the other thing is, if you bring a playmaking big in like that plays big bulk minutes like a Jokic, it takes away from Draymond's strength. Draymond's strength for that team is floating around at the 3, handoffs, just knows, second heartbeat to Steph, knows when to get him the ball, knows his pattern of movement, when he's going to be open. And that's where Draymond's use is. All of a sudden, you get someone like Jokic now who you can put in that spot, shoot the 3 and do the same things as Draymond. You're going to put Draymond in the dunker. That's the other aspect of it. I don't think you can do that.
Yeah, that wouldn't fit. I mean, they don't have that option. Although there were a lot of rumors that Sabonis for Draymond could have been a thing about a year and a half ago or so with the Pacers. I don't know how real any of those talks got, but that's an interesting road fork right there, because that's offense for defense. But God, I think that would be probably an incredible fit for them if that had happened.
You got to figure what move they could actually make. Look, Wiseman, if you're going to go forward with Wiseman, you got to have to sort of get away from how they've been playing split action. He's not that type of player. The only passes he gets and the assists that he gets are like dribble handoffs to shooters. He's not going to like catch it on the block. You do the split action, hit the cutter. He doesn't think like that. He's not a cerebral player. What he does really well is roll to the rim. That's it. He doesn't pass out of the short roll. He's not really a post-up scorer. He could face up and shoot. His footwork is terrible. If he's got a doctor of footwork, I'd sue that motherfucker for malpractice because he travels every time. But what he does is he's a roller. He's a Dwayne Dedman on steroids is what he is. So he's not a cerebral player. He's not a go-to guy. He's a roller. His jump shots are erratic. He can make shots at times, but you're not going to play through them. So like Bogues said, you need Draymond at sort of at that small five. You could play him at 5 and Draymond at 4, but you're going to have to change the way you play. And I don't think Steph and Clay would really work that way and really get to where you want to get to. The problem is what trades are out there if you're going to move Wiseman going forward. Because look,
would Dallas do Draymond plus Wiseman for KP? I'm just spitballing off the top of my head. I'm not even saying it's a good trade. It's just popped in my head.
I think they would based on toughness, to protect Luka. He's a smart player. He's an alpha dog. They don't really have that. Besides Luka, they don't really have that alpha dog type guy. The problem is, if you're Golden State, do you want to take on $90 million? And if you're not sure about it, they have that.
I like it a little better for Dallas than the Warriors.
Oh, no, but Dallas does that in a heartbeat, man.
They do it in a heartbeat. They do it in a heartbeat. But again, you gotta figure out what you want to do because Wiseman's definitely not a player. Look, in development, guys like that, they always get better. You have to sort of figure out one or two things. The problem is you can't get him to a level that he's never going to be. And I don't think he's ever going to be that go-to type of guy that you want him to be. I think he could have some flashes. Like I said, he could roll, he could run. Defensively, he's just okay. He's not a passer. He's not a playmaker. And like Bogues said, Zaza, guys that sort of can make plays out of the 5, sort of pass and be that facilitator, rim protector and things like that. I just don't see him as that player. But, they got to figure out what they want to do because you're not trading Wiggins until his last year of his deal. Clay, I don't think anybody sort of gives you a lot for until they figure out if he's healthy. I think some teams will take a flyer. You're not going to trade Steph Curry. And, so what do you do? I remember we talked about trades potentially just making them up for Bradley Beal at the beginning of the year when Washington was in the tank. And maybe they would do it with the pick, Wiseman, Oubre, because the salary would work. Again, I think you have to figure out what can you get? What are the potential players you could actually get for him?
I'm way more open to the trading of Wiseman than I was early on. But the Bradley Beal thing, I know he's a great player, but it just seems like that's not what they need. It seems like it's redundant where you already have Steph and Clay, and now you're getting another guard scorer on top of that, and Wiggins wants to shoot. That just seems maybe not the right move, but yeah, I'm open to it. And it's a big risk. That's a big risk for Myers because when we talk about Wiseman, we talk about all these things not working out so far and the bad plus minus and not reading the defense and everything else. He's also really talented. He is gifted. He is gifted physically. He can do a Euro step like he's a guard. He's the fastest center I've ever seen. And there's a chance that he could have a credible jump shot. So you look at the trajectory of somebody like Ayton, who now looks awesome for the Suns. And you'd think you deal this guy at the low ebb of his value, and he actually goes to a team where they play pick and roll all the time, and he gets those chances to make those mistakes. I mean, you might never live that down if he really pops.
Yeah, but the interesting one for me is Steph going to sit idle and be okay with being a middle tank team? I mean, what are you hearing, Strauss? He's got 1 year left on his deal. Is it a situation where
he doesn't want that? He is not. You know too. You're playing coy by asking me that question because Steph wants to compete for a championship.
Coy.
Like, that's what he wants.
Coy. No, I'm more thinking of Steph is the Bay Area. So I'm trying to ask you, would he be I'm all in Golden State no matter what, or will there be that predication of, hey, no, like I need to see a plan of us winning games the next couple of years before I even think about penning.
Well, they haven't agreed on that extension, and so here's where it gets interesting. I think Steph has about as much power as he's ever had, never gonna have with the Golden State Warriors. He's never going to have more influence than he has right now, where they want to give him this extension, and he wants to compete, and he just came off an MVP level season. And that really changed the dynamics here because nobody knew what Steph was going to be. He was injured all of last season. He's getting older, and he comes out and he looks like one of the best players in the league. And it changes the situation from, okay, how good Steph going to be, to, oh my God, we're squandering an MVP level player and maybe we really got to go win now. I mean, I think that might be the shift. That might be the shift in mentality. So I think Steph's going to try to use his leverage. I don't think he wants to leave, but I think he wants the Warriors to think that he's capable of leaving, so they do what he wants, so they actually get back in the game, because he really values winning championships, and he measures his legacy according to that, to the point where he set his ego aside and accepted Kevin Durant to come to the Golden State Warriors. So that's the situation, and I think those are the dynamics that might push James Wiseman out of the Bay Area, even if Steph isn't saying specifically, get this kid out. He definitely wants to win now. He doesn't want to squander a third season in a row. That's for sure.
I just think the issue they're going to have is the more you, I'm not going to give up on Wiseman for sure. I think he's going to be a good player. But you don't want to, the more that people see him, the less they'll probably give you for him. In the sense that, the more you see him in these go-to roles, I think you could have, because of the draft being so new, and his career being so new, I think you could have gotten a lot more this year dealing him. And because, look, they're built for now. They're not built for 5 years from now. They don't have it. They're just okay on the second unit. The young players are just okay, decent players. But, the Wiseman's going to be the only guy that gets you really something in a trade going forward. Like we said, I don't think with Clay and Curry, I don't think anyone's giving you a lot for Draymond. Wiseman's the guy. And if you're going to deal him, you're going to deal him now. But what can you get for Wiseman? I think that's the next question you got to ask yourself if you're going to do a deal. Bogues, what do you think? There's market value for him? If you're a team, what would you give him hypothetically if someone says, hey, I can get you Wiseman and a pick? What are you giving me in return?
Oh, it's a tough one. If he's on any other team, I keep him. I agree with you. I think to give up on a young big after year one is suicidal. But the elephant in the room is Steph wanting to win. I know for a fact that Steph and even Draymond to an extent, Clay wasn't too involved. But that season they had a couple of years ago before this past one that was horrendous for them. And even Steph's loss after the playing game. The putting the Wiseman jersey on, there's just something going on there in the was it J. Cole? I don't know who the video was with, the selfie video or the IG live, and there's some stuff going on that I just think Steph's in a position where I don't think he can endure another 30-win season or 20-win season, especially considering that's what he went through his first couple of years in the Bay, and he's built up this now winning brand, which he deserves. I mean, he's one of the best players in the league and coming off an MVP caliber year. It's a tough one, man. I mean, I just don't know where you go. That's why I asked this question, and it's not a coy question. I don't know what direction they're trying to go, because you can't be middle ground, half rebuild, half appeasing Steph to win. You're either all in to win, which means then, you got to move Wiseman, or you're all in development, which means Steph probably doesn't want to be there. So it's
and it gets weird because you know the Lakers, they're actually the opposite of a lot of bombastic owner types, where they like the draft, they like buying into the draft and having draft picks, and they're all about that. I don't know if that's a venture capital culture or what. So they're almost more resistant to the win now mentality than you would think, just stereotyping a egotistical owner. And so there might be a tension. I think that there's more trust the process, patience in ownership than there is at the player level. And where Bob Myers falls and all of that, I don't know, but he's got to earn his money on this one, because this is a massive offseason for this team.
Ethan, let me ask you a question. Since Steve Kerr has taken over, what are the young players they've developed?
The great Kevon Looney. You're not respecting Kevon Looney. I mean, come on. I mean, this is one of the best screen setters in the league.
Don't kill my guy Looney. Looney's a great dude, and he plays his role very, very well. But don't kill my guy.
I love Looney. I can't talk too much shit about Looney. And I think
but I'm saying trust the process. Like, what's your process you've had? And that's the thing. Like, is that going to be a focus? A focal point? And have they done it?
Well, I've heard. I'll give you one thing. I'll give you one thing real quick. I've heard that is an actual concern for them. Over the last course, couple of months, and rumor has it that they have about 15 development coaches running around in that gym right now. So I think they know it's a need to be addressed, but I don't think hiring a boatload of development coaches, where I believe, there's a lot of different guys running around not knowing who to work with, or it was like that at one point. But they know it's definitely an elephant in the room problem for them that they're aware of.
Yeah. And Jordan Poole is the guy who really popped for them, but that happened, it seemed, when he went down and got some G League reps. And credit to them, they incorporated him into what they were doing at the upper level. But if Jordan Poole hadn't just popped, it would be a very ugly scene in terms of development. But
Toscano Anderson actually done well. He's not a bad young player, right?
Yeah, but he's 28.
That's a good point too. Yeah.
But Jordan Poole, we haven't brought up when we talk about trades and everything else. I mean, that's a guy who, he's really talented. I mean, that guy has given them something that they didn't have even in the championship run of he can score in his zone and play with Steph if you need him to play with Steph. And I really want to see what it's going to look like in a lineup that has him and Steph and Clay together. And that could be offensively potent, but they haven't really developed guys. You could also say on the other side of things that they were drafting at the bottom, which is what happens when you win a lot. And so maybe that's part of it, but I do think that they are a team that is used to win now mode, because they were playing for a championship year after year. Earlier in the season, Wiseman got suspended from a game because over the All-Star break, he missed 2 coronavirus tests. And I guess the question for me is, I don't want to bail the kid out of making a bad choice and not doing due diligence, but a lot of these teams, because I would hear this from people with other teams, if one of our young rookies fails one of these tests, we're all over him. We're driving him to the next one. How does he fail 2 tests? And you have to wonder if this is a team that's used to having players in their late 20s who have played for championships. And this is a different thing. More hand-holding, as you guys say, might be required for a James Wiseman than the players that they're used to. So that also might have factored into why it hasn't been the greatest incubator for young players.
Yeah, and the benefit of the doubt for the argument against why there hasn't been a high player development ratio coming through is that haven't had to. It's been a championship or bust year pretty much for everyone of Kerr's years besides the last 2. So that hasn't been really an incentive, where now it's starting to poke its head through the hole. So they need to they definitely need to fix that and produce some more of their own homegrown talent. But as we all know, I
want to interject because I just got a memory, and I want your perspective on it real quick before I forget, because it's late and I'm stupid. I talked to the great Kevon Looney about his rookie season, and he said that basically nobody talked to him. Like, he felt like a ghost because he was injured and he was a rookie and he wasn't playing. and it stuck in my mind as this is what it's like for a rookie on that particular team. Was that your impression of what it was like? Like you were, nobody was really caring too much about old Kevon Looney over there when you guys were playing for 73 wins.
Oh, it was a strange one because he came in and had double hip surgery, I believe, so he wasn't playing. But man, no matter who you are, when you're long-term hurt in the NBA, it sucks because there's a lot of different things that happen. There's number one, there's people looking at you. If you've got an injury where you can still walk, they look at you like, hey man, he's walking. Why can't he play? So you got those questions. Then once you start ramping up your workouts, you might have, okay, they're letting me do 20 minutes on the court at light speed of just touch shooting. Player might come out like, oh, he's shooting out there. Why can't he play? We need the body. So there's a lot of different pressures, and you kind of do get forgotten about. I did the same thing with my ankle when I first got traded there. My rehab took so long to get back, and you feel like everyone's looking at you at times, and why guys not really talking to me, but you're not ostracized from the group, but you definitely feel like you're not part of the group as an injured player. And that's the reality of pro sports, right? You're not in those battles. You're not in those close games. You're not on a lot of those road trips now because injured guys don't travel. So you're missing a lot of the camaraderie that's built up. And I'm sure Kevon probably felt that, where he was kind of, and a rookie, hadn't proved himself. People were kind of like, what the hell's going on? Did we waste a pick on him? We should have got a player that could have helped us. So, I kind of feel bad now that you say that, because I feel like maybe I should have had more conversations with him, with my grumpy self at times. But that's just the brutal business of the NBA. When you're hurt for long periods, it can mess with you mentally because you probably start overthinking things a little bit more than you should.
Did you get an injection in your ankle in that Nuggets playoff series in 2013? I've got this vague memory of it happening. But
yeah. My ankle was, I shouldn't have played that whole year, really. And I came back. If you remember, I played the first 4 games of this regular season trying to come back like a hero because I just got traded there. And then the thing was like a balloon after every game. Had to shut it down till late January. Came back for the playoff run. And it was, man, I was almost close to retirement into that season. Like, you can ask Harrison Barnes. I had many conversations with him about it because I just couldn't, no matter what I did, my ankle would not get better. I'd massage, acupuncture, ice bars, blow up. And I was like, if this goes on for another year, I can't do it. So yeah, I was, taking stupid injections to get through that series. And it worked well though, because I got another 3 years out of him at 36.
Oh, you had a hell of a series in that Denver series. You had that dunk, I remember. That
dunks. I had more than one, man. Come on. But yeah, no, that was my best series as a Warrior in the playoffs. Probably that and the Memphis series where I really played well defensively. But being injured is never fun in the NBA. But let's get through these last 2 segments real quick. We'll go through them real quick. We have a useful or useless stat segment, Ethan. So there's a lot of stupid stats out there. So we either have dumb ones or good ones, and then we debate whether they're useful or not. So here's the first one. Curry shot 53.8% on contested 3-point field goals with an average distance of 27.2 feet. The entire NBA shot 52.6% on contested shots in the paint within an average of 5.1 feet. Is that useful to us?
Useful. I mean, it tells us there are 2 kinds of stats. One that shocks you because you go, oh, I wouldn't have expected that. And one that shocks you because it proves what you already know, but to like such an extent that it's still crazy. And this is the latter category where, yeah, we all know it, but when you put it like that, yeah, that guy, hey, I don't want to make any waves, any more controversies, but that Steph Curry guy,
he can play, huh?
Pretty good 3-point shooter.
Pro.
Yeah, I mean, I agree with Ethan. Like, some stats you look at and you're like, holy shit. And I mean, if he's shooting 53% on contested 3-point field goals at 27 feet, that's a pretty, I mean, it's a useful stat to tell you how skilled that guy is. And then also, if you're going to like break down players at that or from different distances, contested versus non-contested, I think it's a pretty useful stat. But yeah, I think that's a pretty useful stat to see the fucking distance that guy pulls up from and how efficient that he is from it.
Amazing. And I think it's why we saw teams basically doubling him at the half court line in those playing games. Like they actually had, almost like a defensive line forming around him, like throw it to anybody else, even wide open, we'll take our chances. And that's to me, it's useful to an extent, but man, that's just unbelievable. You're shooting better from 27 feet than most players in the NBA do at 5 feet.
Contested, too.
Yeah,
Contested, which is crazy.
Just an amazing number. Next one, 11 games in a row when ref by Scott Foster, CP3 loses in the playoffs.
Refs are human. I mean, I'd say it's a useful stat. I would need to know all the circumstances of the matchup.
He hates Chris Paul. That's your circumstance.
There you go.
But I mean, talent-wise, I mean, some of those were against the Warriors, if I recall, who had the Rockets' number in those series. So, yeah, I'd say useful stat, probably an indication. But hey, he's the crew chief. He's not the only. He's not all the refs. Yeah, there are a lot of factors going on in these games.
Pro.
It's pretty interesting when you lose 11 games in a row, ref by the same guy, even though there's, 3-man crews. But like you said, he fucking hates the guy. So what are you going to do? That's sort of what it is, right? He fucking hates him. And hey, look, I don't give a fuck what kind of ref you are, good, bad, or indifferent. If you fucking hate somebody and you think they're jarring you and showing you up, you're not going to fucking give them calls.
Do you really want to antagonize a guy who has power over your job, who makes a shitload less than you do? I mean, just the resentment and the ability for revenge is there. Why give it to him? Why even allow? Why? That's what I don't get. Why antagonize? Why do it?
Yeah, it's an emotional game.
Yeah, they have so much effect in the game, and they never get fired. They have to try to assassinate 9 world leaders for a fucking NBA ref to get fired and taken off games. So who gives it? I would just say fuck it. I always told guys that have problems with referees, look, put your arm around them, especially young players. Put your arm around them. The next time, don't say anything. Next time, put your arm around them and say, hey, what did you see there? Because this is what I saw. And just even if you're fucking bullshitting, you're faking it. I mean, I don't know. 11 straight fucking games. You better send some fucking edible arrangements to that motherfucker's house.
Yeah, it's you got to work the refs off the court, on the court, however you can do it. But send fucking Jake from State Farm to that motherfucker's house with a free policy or something.
Last one we have is Jason Tatum, the only player in NBA history, pro. This is a good one too. Sherwood, to have 50 points in a playing tournament, playoffs, and regular season. This is actually from per SportsCenter. Can you believe that stat? Who would have thought?
Give that motherfucker a raise, man. Give that fucking guy or girl at SportsCenter a fucking raise.
Useless.
Yeah, I mean, I would put that in the useless category. It really.
Yeah, give him a raise, and with that raise for $1 a month, you could read Ethan Strauss with his fucking fortune cookie fucking wisdom.
Hey, I've got an article out right now I want to promote on the local ratings for the NBA, and the surprise in that we didn't even get to talking about that. Hey, shocker. Teams that draft players as opposed to players who just join on and sign, those teams that are built around drafted players do way better. Fans form a connection with them. So, something to think about if you want to trade James Wiseman or whatever. Something to look at.
You know what? Fuck it. Use my sign in. Name, hostess, password, cupcake.
I should promo that better. It also proves that Steph is the biggest draw in the league, TV wise. So, hey, at The Athletic, Ethan Strauss, give me a subscription.
What's it costing us?
I don't even know.
I think Pro said.
By the way, Bogues, man, he comes back to the Warriors in 2019, and we're talking about The Athletic. Tim Kawakami in the locker room talking about The Athletic, and Andrew, he wants a subscription. He wanted us to just give him a subscription for free, and he just wouldn't let up about this. You've made over $100 million in your career. You want the Athletic subscription for free?
It's on principle.
Hey, Bo.
On principle. And I got it for free. Raymond Ritter gave me his login. Thank you, Raymond.
Hey, Bogues, you know what it cost us? 2 hours and 45 minutes and counting of our fucking lives that we won't get back.
Yeah, I see.
Hey.
All right, let's go to fact and fake news, and then we're done. Fact or fake news? So give us
All
a fact
right.
or fake news. First one, I'm going to go to you, Strauss. Would KD still be in a Golden State uniform if Ethan Sherwood Strauss did not break his nuts on a daily basis?
Fake news. I mean, as much as I want to go with the joke and I like the idea that I chased Kevin out of town, the reality is that Kevin was out of town and didn't like that I brought it up that was happening. So he would be gone. The die was cast, and you can see that reflected in a bunch of interviews that various players and Steve Kerr have done about the situation.
Bro, what do you think? Do you
Folks,
think he's lying to us?
I heard if Ethan said, Kevin, Rome wasn't built in a day, he would have signed for the minimum.
I should have said many hands make the work light. Look at your
There you
teammates here. Look at your support.
There you fucking go. Yeah, I think it's fake news. He was out anyway.
Yeah, fake news.
And plus he moved 3,000 miles away from the prick. So, he got his
Win-win.
revenge in the end.
Win-win.
Yeah, win-win.
All right, next one. The Miami Heat blow up their roster this offseason after getting absolutely pummeled by the Milwaukee Bucks. Fact or fake news?
What do you think? First of all, Bogues, what do you think of that?
Oh, I think they got to do something. I think Duncan Robinson's a wanted commodity in the league and will be. Jimmy Butler hasn't worked out yet. I don't know. I think it was pretty dismal. Something's going on there. So I think they're gonna make some changes.
Yeah.
Ethan, what do you think?
Yeah, I think so. I just wish I knew what was going on with Jimmy Butler. I mean, you guys have me wondering if something's up, and it's hard for me to know how they should proceed if I don't know exactly why the hell he was so disappointed in this particular postseason. But yeah, I think there's some impatience there, and they went very much win now, so shaking it up makes sense. I don't know what we're judging as shaking it up, but shaking it up makes sense.
I mean, they're going to have to do something. And plus, Duncan Robinson's probably going to get anywhere from 16 to 20 million in free agency. So, and they're probably the best team in the league at handling the cap. I'm going to say fake news and now if they lose guys in free agency, that's one thing. But I think they're going to, if Jimmy's okay in the sense that that story wasn't true and it's just he had a bad series and we're reading it wrong, I think they keep it, but I think if there's something wrong, they're going to get somebody out of town. It's not going to be their coach, and it's probably going to be Jimmy Butler. If that's the case, I don't think they're going to re-sign Victor Oladipo with his health.
That's a big offense. That's a big offense that Trump built that you're sitting on right now.
No. If they lose Duncan Robinson, they're going to lose. They're going to lose him. But I'm saying it depends on what happened to Jimmy Butler. But I'm going to say no, they don't. I'm going to say, you know what? Riley's pretty good with this shit. I think he'll figure things out. They got a good team, and they were competitive. Forget about the bubble shit. They were pretty competitive at the end of the year, and they were rolling at the end. They were inconsistent most of the year, and then they got it going. You could blame COVID, you could blame whatever, but they got a good fucking team, man. I say they keep it together.
Okay. Last one, Kwame Brown ends up with his own talk show by the year's end. He's currently, gentlemen, at 301,000 subscribers on YouTube with his mama's cooking. Fact or fake news, he has his own show by the end of the year.
I mean, that's a fact because it's already true. He has his own show. Why does he need a studio?
An actual his own paid show.
No, I reject the premise. I'm taking this question in the spirit that it's asked. I don't see it happening that he has a Jimmy Kimmel like talk show, but this is TV in the modern era, right? And he needs to team up with a producer though, because I mean, just like there are only so many people who will be able to power through.
Watch out, man. You don't want to be on that list, man. Watch what you say. You do not want to be on that list.
I'm at the level right here where if he went after me, it would help me as opposed to some of these people where it hurts them. But
by the way, I was expecting much more out of Stephen A. Smith with that video
horrible.
He put together.
That was awful,
bro. The clips of like mess ups. Like, who gives a fuck? Like, I thought he was going to go hard in. Yeah, it was brutal.
Sorry, Ethan.
It was
I should have prefaced it with what I meant by own show. Someone's actually going to pay him in the form of mainstream media or an all the smoke type podcast. Someone's going to actually do it all for him, pay him. You come here and talk shit. That'd be my detailed question for Fact or Fake News.
I don't see that happening necessarily. I think he's a little too dangerous. He's a little too honest.
Yeah.
I don't think that there's going to be an infrastructure that wants to marshal their resources behind him only to see him light it all on fire. So I don't see that happening. But I am enjoying the show. Hell, I'm even enjoying your show about the show. So the Kwame content has been top notch. And I hope it keeps coming. I like the takes.
So we're all fake news then.
Yeah.
I think it's better on YouTube.
Yeah, I go fake news. He stays on YouTube. Plus, he gets those fucking tips, man. He makes every video he does. Most of these videos, he's making over $1,000 easy on just people giving him money on YouTube. It's the most amazing shit I've ever seen in my life. We need a tip jar, motherfucker.
Yeah,
we need a tip jar.
Yeah, we're gonna throw coins over my balcony.
Yeah, you're fucking you're bragging about how much money you get after retirement. I'm fucking selling blood and semen to pay my fucking mortgage, asshole.
Hopefully not together.
They're paying you to take that. Don't lie. Anyway, it's been 2 hours and 46 minutes of pure anarchy. Thank you, Ethan Sherwood Strauss. You got anything else you want to promo real quick?
Just the column at The Athletic. I'm doing TV Fridays where I talk about the sports media business. Subscribe. I can't even say that 3 times fast. And my podcast, House of Strauss, which Andrew has appeared on, is a weekly fixture. Thanks for having me on, guys.
By the way, Ethan, what happened? What happened to your hit character on your podcast that you used to do?
The what? What did I used to do?
What was that alternate character that you had on your podcast that you used to do?
Oh, Radio Ethan, the blowhard guy who yells different at different takes. The problem is it became one of those things. I was like the sitcom character where they just wanted me to say the catchphrase. I had too many colleagues asking me to do it after a while, so I'll break it out. I'll break it out sometime for the playoffs.
Pro, what do you got for us? Want to promo anything besides McDonald's?
For $1.10 a month, you could have Ethan talk to you and get that bullshit character that ain't worth fucking the 10 cents you're going to have to pay for it.
EthanQuotes.com. All right. Thanks, gentlemen. Appreciate it. That's episode 22 of the Rogue Bogues podcast. Like, subscribe, all that fun stuff that Ethan said. And we'll catch you next week.